Chapter 278. In Sullen's system, 15 soldiers were in the process of advancing. It took about 2 hours to advance, but those who failed to advance often didn't take that long. After about an hour, soldiers who failed to advance began to come out one after another. Sulen didn't have any good way to deal with these people. The success rate of fusing the templates of the formation breaker and the sound shooter camp was not high. As for the better self-created hero template, although the success rate of this thing was 100%, the probability of obtaining it was too low. Sulen had only obtained 2 so far. Moreover, the self-created hero template was not something that anyone could use. Ordinary soldiers had no chance to use it. One by one, the soldiers who failed to advance left the quiet room. The light balls of the templates were also taken back into the tiger tally. Finally, after 2 hours, the last 3 soldiers came out of the quiet room. They had successfully fused the templates. 2 soldiers of the formation breaker and 1 archer of the sound shooter camp. Sound shooter camp, current population, 1500. After a cruel selection of excellent archers, they have successfully advanced to become soldiers of the sound shooter camp. They have a stronger physique, elite vision, and powerful attack power. The soldiers of the sound shooter camp inherited all the archers' previous talents, including advanced agility, intermediate strength, tenacity, eagle eye, evasion, and other talents. They also added an exclusive talent of the sound shooter camp, sound shooter. Sound shooter, sharp arrow, rain of arrows, featherwood shooter, life and death, attack speed increased by 30%, range increased by 30%, additional effect, rain of arrows, sharp arrow, rain of arrows, shoot a large number of arrows in a very short period of time. Range of arrows is reduced by 20%, power is reduced by 15%, attack speed is increased by 200% for 30 seconds. After use, the user will enter a weakened state. Sharp arrow, shoot at a target with great effort, attack distance increased by 50%, arrow speed increased by 100%, additional effect, armor break. Seeing that the archer of the sound shooter camp had successfully advanced, Sulen couldn't wait to take him to the training ground for testing. The basic ability test was quickly completed. Whether it was the range or the number of times the bow was pulled, it was much higher than the previous archer. In addition to these, there was also the test of new skills. After activating sky-filling arrow rain, the archers of the sniper battalion instantly grabbed 5 arrows and began to shoot. Their speed was extremely fast. Then, wave after wave of arrows were shot out. In 30 seconds, the archers of the sniper battalion had shot out at least 20 waves of arrows. In the end, the target 200 meters away was filled with hundreds of arrows. Furthermore, the arrow penetrated the target. This kind of attack power could already penetrate ordinary iron armor. In other words, a single archer from the sound shooting battalion could wipe out a group of 100 soldiers in just 30 seconds. Sullen's eyes lit up when he saw this. However, even though the skill sky rain of arrows was powerful, it would cause the player to enter a weakened state after using it. They would need to rest for a period of time to recover. During this period, the shooting speed, range, and power of the archers would decrease by 50%. After the archery battalion recovered, they began to test out the skill, great precision. Compared to the dazzling arrows that filled the sky, great precision was only an ordinary arrow. However, this arrow was no less stunning than the previous arrows that filled the sky. A flash of light could be seen on the arrow. Then, the arrow streaked across the sky like a bolt of lightning and instantly hit the target. The center of the target was directly pierced by the arrow. After piercing the target, the arrow continued to penetrate the rock wall behind it. In the end, nearly half of the arrow was buried in the rock wall behind it. Seeing such exaggerated power, Sulen couldn't help but inwardly click his tongue. Even dwarf plate armor couldn't block this power. Moreover, the shooting range was 400 meters. The effect of this arrow was already comparable to a ballista, and its accuracy far exceeded that of a ballista. Although a ballista could also shoot 500 to 600 meters, after 100 to 200 meters, the accuracy was very low. This skill was very useful for sniping enemy generals on the battlefield. Although Sky Rain of Arrows didn't cause one to enter a weakened state after using Sky Rain of Arrows, it still couldn't be used continuously. Moreover, using this skill consumed a lot of energy. Even if one was at full strength, they could only use it 3 times. The archers of the Sound Shooting Battalion were unexpectedly powerful. If 500 archers of the Sound Shooting Battalion were to release their skills together on the battlefield, it was possible to directly wipe out an army. However, when he thought about the success rate of the advancement, Su Len couldn't help but scratch his head. Of course, after seeing the power of the archers of the Archery Battalion, Su Luen also had some expectations for the ultimate class of half-elf archers. However, the half-elf archers required too much EXP to advance, and there was still a long way to go before they could advance into phantom magic archers. The development of the northern battlefront city was very fast. More than 80% of the city's population was building their territory. Apart from housing and city walls, the land reclamation in the northern battlefront city continued to increase. According to Sullen's plan, the northern battlefront city needed to reclaim 100,000 acres of fertile land. 100,000 acres of fertile land sounded like a lot, but on average, it was less than 1 acre per person. Take Cult City for example. There were more than 300,000 acres of fertile land around the city. Many farmers had already moved out of the city to make it easier for them to farm. The same would happen to the territories around the northern battlefront city after it stabilized. After the outer city of the northern battlefront city was built, Su Len planned to move the market there too. The inner city was mostly built with housing. Perhaps the northern battlefront city would also rise one day with real estate. Since the population of the city had increased, Su Len asked the army to recruit more soldiers. However, these soldiers would not join the army directly. They would be part of the militia instead. They would not be paid, only some subsidies. Su Len planned to train most of the men in the northern battlefront city into the militia. Of course, the militia training was not as good as the regular army, but it had a lot of benefits. For example, it cost less. If there was a shortage of soldiers during a battle, the militia could help defend the city. Although the militia's combat power was low, they were still good at defending the city. The militia could also be used as a supplement to the regular army. If the regular army suffered casualties, the militia could pick the best ones to replace them. Seeing that the northern battlefront city was developing well, Su Len brought some people to the Mirror Lake City. Compared to the northern battlefront city, the conditions in the Mirror Lake City were much simpler. The city walls had already been built. Now, they were building houses and some basic facilities. Mirror Lake City had a big lake next to it, so there was a lot of fish there. The lake was the main source of meat for the city. The population of the Mirror Lake City had been replenished a few times, and now, there were around 10,000 people. They still needed the support of the northern battlefront city for food. According to Sullen's plan, the Mirror Lake City needed to develop 3,000 mu of farmland before the snowfall this year. Mirror Lake City had already developed a few hundred mu of farmland. The Mirror Lake City only had 500 soldiers, but these 500 soldiers were all elite veterans. These soldiers were also divided into 2 groups. They took turns to sweep the surrounding plains and capture more slaves. Northern Battlefront City, Mirror Lake City, and Centaur City formed a triangle. After the 3 cities took turns clearing out the area, the number of monsters had gradually decreased. Perhaps in a few years, villages and towns could be built in this area. The triangular plains would also be quickly cultivated. Su Len did not appoint anyone to be in charge of the Mirror Lake City, so many things had to be reported to the Northern Battlefront City. Then, after the Northern Battlefront City made a decision, they would have to send the order back. Going back and forth was a bit troublesome. Su Len had another purpose this time, and that was to appoint some officials. At the sawmill to the east of the Mirror Lake City, there was a small-scale battle going on there. Everyone, speed up. Charge. Under the command, the soldiers of the Northern Battlefront City began to charge. The leading soldier roared and threw down his shield. He raised his spear and began to charge. The archers behind him also began to provide cover. Archers, 45 degrees to the side. Cover them with arrows. The northern battlefront city's army was made up of spearmen and archers. At the same time, there were also some centaur cavalry. However, the Mirror Lake city did not have such equipment. The spearmen wearing metal armor and holding spears began to charge. Aside from orcs and ogres, the other races in the wilderness could not stop them. On the battlefield, the soldiers were facing some gnolls. There were about 300 gnolls, and their physiques were more robust. They were about 2 meters tall and were equipped with simple weapons. The workers of the sawmill were hiding behind fences. In front of them were some spearmen defending. Many areas outside of the Mirror Lake city were being harassed by these monsters. The rain of arrows covered the area, and a large number of gnolls were turned into hedgehogs. The vanguard suffered heavy casualties, and their formation was instantly disrupted. The charging spearmen took advantage of this opportunity to speed up, and their 3-meter-long spears pierced through the gnolls. The spearmen's charge did not slow down, and they continued to charge forward. Following that, more gnolls were pierced by the spears. Basically, every spear had 2 to 3 gnolls skewered on it. At this point, the spearmen's momentum had been exhausted. It was time for the spearmen in the front row to drop their spears and draw their swords from their waists, continuing to fight the jackallans. The spearmen in the back row weaved through the gaps and began to push the gnolls back. Charge! Just as the gnolls were being forced back, an angry roar sounded out. 20 barbarian warriors charged from the flank. Compared to the spearmen's charge, the barbarians' charge was even more unstoppable. Although there were only 20 of them, they gave off a feeling that the sky was falling and the earth was splitting apart. They were unstoppable. Bang! 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 After a series of muffled sounds, the gnolls standing at the outermost edge were sent flying by the barbarians. When they landed, their bodies were clearly twisted. It was obvious that many of their bones had been broken. Blood kept coming out of their mouths. It seemed that they did not have long to live. After charging into the enemy's formation, the barbarians began to wave their axes. Everywhere they passed, there was no enemy. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. A large number of gnolls were cut in half by the sharp axes. For a moment, the gnolls' formation became even more chaotic and was about to collapse. Chapter 279. Awoo. At this moment, a taller jackallan wearing iron armor let out a howl. Then, the chaotic gnolls resumed their formation. Leader? The leader of the spearmen reacted instantly. This group of gnolls was under the command of a leader. No wonder they could hold on for so long under the attack of the Northgard City army. After confirming the gnolls' location, the general gave the order, 130 meters ahead. Target that big gnoll in metal armor. Cover it with arrows. After hearing the order, the archers first calculated the distance, then raised their bows and started shooting. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of bowstrings was heard continuously. In the next second, a large number of arrows flew into the air. 100 arrows directly covered the gnoll leader's location, completely blocking any space to dodge. Before it could continue to command the army, it was nailed to the ground by the rain of arrows. A large number of arrows pierced through the crude metal armor on its body, making it look like a big hedgehog. The death of the leader caused the gnolls, who had just stabilized, to fall into chaos again. Some of the gnolls had already started to run away. Under the combined attack of the spearmen, the barbarians, and the archers, those gnolls were no match at all. Soon, all the gnolls who resisted were killed. After arranging for people to capture the captives, the rest of the soldiers began to clean up the battlefield. Sulen stood not far away and watched the end of the battle. He nodded in his mind. He was patrolling the territory with the soldiers, and he didn't expect to see the spearmen's captain commanding the battle when he arrived. Go and call the spearmen's captain over. Sulen ordered the servant next to him. Soon, a servant rode over. After about 10 minutes, a burly spearman's captain with a scar on his face came in front of Sulen and bowed. Greetings, Lord. Rise. Sulen said with a smile. You were the one commanding the battle just now? Yes, Lord. The soldier nodded and said. Although he had seen it with his own eyes, Su Len was still surprised. One had to know that Su Len didn't train these soldiers to command. This soldier was completely self-taught. Thinking of this, Su Len used the system to check the soldier's information. The system prompt sounded in Sullen's ears, and what surprised him was the content of the prompt. Ding! Congratulations, host. You have discovered a hero among your subordinates. A new hero? Su Len was shocked when he heard the system notification. After all, the chances of a soldier becoming a hero were extremely low. He did not expect to be so lucky to encounter one here. Su Len seriously sized up the spearman in front of him. He was tall and muscular, and looked very well proportioned. His expression was solemn, and his gaze was firm. His posture was also very standard, giving people a feeling of steadiness. What's your name? Su Len asked. Occam, the soldier replied. Su Len nodded and continued, your command just now was excellent. You have proven your bravery and military talent. I am going to appoint you as a general. Are you willing to pledge your loyalty to me and fight for me? A hint of surprise appeared on Occam's face, but it quickly disappeared. He knelt in front of Su Len on one knee, placed his right hand on his chest, and said with a serious expression, Lord. I, Occam, am willing to pledge my loyalty to you. I will become your sword and fight for you everywhere. As soon as he finished speaking, the system prompt sounded in Sullen's ears again. Congratulations, host. Hero, Occam pledges his loyalty to you and requests to become your subordinate. Do you accept? Accept. Occam's name appeared in the hero column in the system interface. At the same time, his data also appeared in front of Su Len. Hero, Occam, loyalty, 100 race, human rank, transcendent rank, 3 profession, warrior strength, 23 agility, 14 vitality, 21 spirit, 12 charm, 12 command, 86 characteristics, talents advanced sturdiness, intermediate fortitude, strong will, discipline, command, calm, insight, bravery, integrity, loyalty, prohibition, coldness, battle reflexes commander. He is an excellent commander. Under his command, the army will display stronger combat power, command +10, army combat power +10, prohibition. He hates drinking and does not allow alcohol in his army. Army discipline +15 skills, charge, shield bash, evasion, smash, cleave, hurling, boost morale, weapon mastery, hand-to-hand combat, tackle, rapid assault, defense, dual weapon mastery. Weapon proficiency, gun mastery 182, sword mastery 165, hurling 130, horsemanship 107. Looking at Occam's attributes, Su Len was quite satisfied. Although a rank 3 transcendent was not considered high among the heroes, as long as he worked hard and participated in a few battles, he would be able to advance to rank 4 very quickly. Moreover, Occam's attributes were different from Boulder's and Johnson's. He was a commander-type hero. Although Boulder and Johnson were stronger than Occam, they were the kind of heroes who charged into battle. Although these heroes were strong, they didn't know how to deploy troops or fight a war. The only hero in Northern Citadel that could hold her own was Succubus Chrissy. Moreover, Succubus Chrissy wasn't familiar with battle formations. Occam was a commander-type hero, which was very beneficial for the expansion of Northern Citadel. Su Len pulled out his sword and placed it on Occam's shoulder. He followed the knight's way of swearing loyalty in this world. Very good. After the ceremony, Su Len gave his sword to Occam, who was kneeling on one knee, and said in a deep voice, "From today onwards, you are the military commander of Mirror Lake City. The army of Mirror Lake City will be under your command. At the same time, you will be the governor of Mirror Lake City and will be responsible for the construction of Mirror Lake City." "Yes, sir," Occam replied when he heard Sullen's appointment. Appointing Occam as the governor of Mirror Lake City was only a temporary measure. In Sullen's mind, the military and administrative forces of a city were 2 completely different lines. The military was only responsible for training troops and fighting, while the administrative forces were responsible for developing the city. The two sides cooperated with each other or restrained each other to form a balance. This separation of civil and military was very necessary. If there were no such restrictions, when there were more territories and more generals, there would be no restrictions. Those generals might very well become local tyrants. Although these people had declared their loyalty to Sulan, their descendants might not. In order to prevent the emergence of such separatist forces, Sulan had banned them from the root. However, the situation now was a bit special. Sulan did not have enough manpower. When the officer training base in Northern Citadel was upgraded, a better training system would be established. Then, qualified officers would be trained. When that time came, Occam's power would be taken back and his position would be changed. In the future, Sulan would also confer nobles. In this world, before you had the power to break the rules, it was best to follow the rules of this world. Although the aristocratic system had many shortcomings, it was very suitable for this era. Of course, Sulan was not like other countries where the nobles had absolute authority in their fief. Everything in the fief was controlled by the nobles. This was impossible. The nobles in Sulan were like hereditary military commanders. They had their own army, but they did not have the right to govern the fief. The right to govern the fief belonged to the country. The taxes in the fief were also equally distributed by the country and the nobles. Although the fief was nominally ruled by the lord of a city, the lord did not control all the wealth in the city. There were free people, merchants, and ordinary civilians in the city. These people owned land and houses. The wealth belonged to these people. Although it belonged to the lord in name, the lord only owned a part of the land or manor. It was impossible for the lord to own all the land. In Sulan's rules, the nobles owned manors, castles, mansions, and knights. However, the army that protected the city had to be owned by the country. The nobles could only keep their own private army. At the same time, all the land except the fief of the lord belonged to the duchy. The free people and merchants were also citizens of the duchy. The laws in the fief were the same as those in the duchy. In other words, the nobles could keep their wealth, but the management of the city, political power, and laws belonged to the duchy. Of course, the nobles could also hold positions in the duchy. Their status as nobles did not affect these positions. As for the sudden change from the feudal lord's fief system to the feudal county centralization system, Sulan had considered it. Although he had the system, the loyalty in the system could not be locked to the maximum value. Only those who used the self-created hero template could be locked to it. Once he implemented the county system, the nobles who did not get enough benefits would definitely not be willing. After all, being a local tyrant or a local rich man, as long as one was not stupid, one would know which choice was better. At that time, there would even be defections. After all, the surrounding countries were all fief systems. Therefore, Sulan decided to centralize the power in this way. In fact, Sulan did not care much about the wealth. What he cared about was the population and land. The foundation of a country was built on the population and land. Sulan had also studied the fief system in Florence and the surrounding countries. Although the fief system made the nobles the local tyrant in the fief, they still had to pay taxes to the nobles one level above them. Under normal circumstances, it was half. Of course, the lord's own property belonged to him. These taxes would be divided step by step and finally go to the king. In this way, as long as there were no problems, the king would always be the most powerful. Of course, in this extraordinary world, there were many changes. For example, the appearance of a legend. In fact, the law of this world was still the law of the jungle. After inspecting the progress of Mirror Lake City, Sulan handed the development plan of Mirror Lake City to Occam. Then he returned to North City with the army. Chapter 280. On the way back to Northern Town, Sulan went to Centaur City. Centaur City was very big. 70% of the population were centaurs while the remaining 30% were humans. Compared to Mirror Lake City, Centaur City was much simpler. There were more livestock pens here. Centaurs were good at breeding, but they weren't good at farming. Outside of Centaur City, there was a large grassland. Aside from cattle and sheep, it was also where Northtown's military horses were produced. Northtown had 6,000 to 7,000 soldiers, but they had more than 20,000 war horses. Currently, all the soldiers in Northern Town were mounted infantry. Some of the soldiers could even fight on horseback. For example, some of the half-elves could already easily shoot from horseback. Compared to humans, the half-elves were a bit weaker. After all, the half-elves were born with high agility. Moreover, there were druids among the half-elves, so they could communicate with animals more easily. The centaurs used to be a nomadic tribe, but now they were semi-nomadic. With Centaur City, the centaur herders would return to Centaur City every once in a while to buy all kinds of supplies. In the past, the centaur tribe would have a large number of livestock freeze to death during winter. Moreover, there was no food during winter, so many livestock would starve and lose their fat. Every winter was very difficult for the centaurs. Now that Centaur City was here, these problems were no longer a problem for them. Centaur City blocked out the wind and snow in the northern town. Honeycomb coal was now widely used in northern town. The Lord's Castle, Sulen, had also extravagantly installed floor heating. Centaur City was the same. All the livestock pens were equipped with coal stoves and chimneys. It was very safe for the livestock to spend the winter here. They didn't have to worry about orcs or gnolls robbing them, nor did they have to worry about the livestock freezing to death. In the past, the northern town city was researching silage. Sulen didn't raise livestock in his past life, but he had heard of silage before. However, he didn't know much about it. He only knew the name and some of the steps, but he didn't know how to make it. Therefore, he could only let the druids research according to the little information that Sulen had provided. These druids had already made some progress, but they still needed to use some nature spells to make silage. This wasn't a problem for the druids, but it would be hard to spread it. After all, there weren't many people who knew nature spells, so not many spellcasters would do this. In addition to silage, Northern Town City also provided large amounts of grain. In Centaur City, there were veterinarians, merchants, and even people who were good at farming. There were also tax officials. All livestock transactions were limited to Centaur City, which made it easier to collect taxes. Northern Town City now had another job, and that was to collect wool. Not long ago, the half-elves in Northern Town City researched wool weaving technology. Now, Northern Town City could weave wool, silk, linen, cotton, and several other kinds of cloth. However, besides linen, the production of the other kinds of cloth wasn't high. The centaurs' annual income from raising livestock was very good, so the centaurs' lives were much better than before. After all, in the centaur tribe, only the centaur chieftain could enjoy a good life. The other centaurs were no different from the orcs. Salt, clothes, weapons, tea, pottery, wine, and sugar were all things that the centaurs couldn't produce. Now that they had joined the northern battlefront city, these things could be easily bought with a bit of money. Although the centaurs still had a lot of power, it would be very difficult to make them betray the northern battlefront city. The centaurs at the bottom of the hierarchy didn't want to go back to their previous lives. It was easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but it was hard to go from extravagance to frugality. This wasn't just a saying. In the past, no one had enjoyed a city that sheltered them from the wind and rain. They had delicious food, warm clothes, and their own property. This was simply impossible in the past. Now that the centaurs were asked to give up on this life and go back to their previous life, the centaurs at the bottom wouldn't agree. This was also done deliberately by Sulen. His method was completely open. Even if the centaur chieftain knew about it, they couldn't blame him or stop him. Using this method, Sulen firmly tied the centaur tribe to Northern Town City. Sulen didn't have the intention to completely annex the centaur tribe. He just wanted the centaurs to become a vassal of Northern Town City. Looking at the current results, it was quite good. Mission was still supportive of the centaur tribe's change. Before this, the centaur tribe liked to rob. They had 4 legs and could run very fast. Their arrows were very accurate, and they were very powerful. This made the centaurs the most famous robbers in the wilderness. At that time, the centaurs didn't want to trade at all. Later on, they had a conflict with the Beastmen tribes. Under the pressure of the Beastmen tribes, the centaurs began to trade on a small scale. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that they traded with the humans and received all kinds of supplies, the centaurs would have already declined in the conflict with the Beastmen tribes. Of course, the centaurs suffered heavy casualties because they were too careless. When Sulan arrived at Centaur City, the city was in the middle of a cattle and sheep trade. The centaur tribe's cattle and sheep were currently monopolized by Northern Town City. Of course, when the number of cattle and sheep was increased, it would gradually be opened to other caravans. This time, there weren't many cattle and sheep to be traded. It wasn't the season for cattle and sheep to be sold. "Welcome, Lord." The little mare Mission led many centaurs to greet him and gave him a warm hug. "How are you living here?" Sulan asked after he broke away from the two towering balls. "We are living very well. Just last week, the tribe welcomed a few new lives." The little mare Mission said happily. "Thank you again for your help." Sulan waved his hand and said, "No need to thank me. After all, the centaurs are now part of Northern Town City. As the Lord of Northern Town City, I have the obligation to make the lives of my people better. You are the best Lord." Led by Mission, Suluan arrived at the largest house in Centaur City. The centaur tribe did not have a chief yet. A group of centaurs sat on linen and straw mats. In the middle of the room was a huge bonfire. Several chefs were roasting lambs. Drops of fat dripped from the roasted lambs, creating clusters of flames. While the chefs were roasting the lambs, they were constantly brushing sauce on them. This method was improved by Frodo. After all, the centaurs would only dip their meat in salt before eating it. Sulan and Mission sat in the main seats. In addition to a dozen centaurs, there were also some humans. These humans were tax collectors and merchants sent by Northern Town City. Although the banquet was very simple, the atmosphere was very good. These centaurs were very satisfied with their current life. The purpose of Suluan's inspection was to see the life of the centaurs. On the other hand, he was ready to officially appoint the governor of the Centaur City. Centaur City was different from Mirror Lake City. The residents here were mainly centaurs. It was impossible to appoint a centaur to be the governor. This would make the centaurs panic, so the best candidate was Mission. However, other than the governor, more than half of the officials in the hall were humans. Especially the tax collector, the market manager, the warehouse manager, and even the city defense officer needed both humans and centaurs. The Centaur City had a group of soldiers stationed here. There weren't many people, only 100. These people were usually responsible for maintaining the security of the territory. With these people, the Centaur City wouldn't be completely controlled by the centaurs. The centaur tribe was now under the elder system. Under Sullan's request, the centaurs began to learn the humans' language. Under these circumstances, the centaurs in the North City gradually began to break away from their primitive tribal state and slowly entered the age of civilization. Perhaps in a few hundred years, the scholars who studied the history of the centaurs would call this the Centaurs' Age of Enlightenment. Sulan stayed in Centaur City for a day before leaving with his team and returning to the North City. The construction of the North City was still progressing steadily. As soon as they approached the North City, a cry came from the sky. Sulan looked up and saw a group of Cryopteris with a wingspan of 3 meters quickly flying over. These Cryopteris had been raised for half a year and were now past their infancy stage. Cryopteris needed 3 years to reach adulthood. Only then could they start training. He was looking forward to these Cryopteris nights. In the last battle with the orcs, he saw the power of the orc wyvern knights. If those wyverns hadn't met Alex, the 3,000 harpies would have suffered heavy casualties. The harpies could bully an army without air power, but once they met the hippogriff knights, wyvern knights, or griffin knights, they would suffer heavy losses. The biggest one in the sky was Sullan's ice Quetzalcoatlus. After seeing Sulan, the ice Quetzalcoatlus directly dived towards Sulen. The little guy flapped its wings and wanted to land on Sullen's shoulder, but it seemed to have forgotten its size. In the end, it could only land on the ground beside him. Unlike other Cryopteris, the ice Quetzalcoatlus had a thin layer of dragon scales on its body. Although its defense was not as strong as a real dragon, it was still much stronger than an ordinary Quetzalcoatlus. Sulen rubbed its head and let the little guy play by itself. Although the little guy was less than a year old, a Euron also had a dragon's aura. Its presence scared the horses. After sending the little guy away, it took a while for the horses to recover. This also made Sulen notice the weakness of the horses. When facing the enemy cavalry on the battlefield, it seemed that the dragon's aura could directly destroy the cavalry's horse. What was the difference between a cavalry without a horse and a tiger without claws and teeth? Chapter 281. The advantage of coming to Northern Battlefront City was obvious. The knights in Northern Battlefront City were all centaurs. As intelligent beings, although they would be affected by the dragon aura, the effect was minimal. Of course, the warhorses in Northern Battlefront City would be affected as well. Sulen planned to train the warhorses accordingly so that they could slowly get used to the dragon aura. Warhorses were actually very timid animals. It would take a long time for them to get used to the dragon aura. However, Sulen was not in a hurry. After all, the warhorses in Northern Battlefront City were mostly used for quick advance or retreat. After returning to Northern Battlefront City, Sulen immediately received news from Aiden. Sulen had asked them to collect information about the Minotaurs. They had completed their mission. There are more than 300 Minotaurs in the tribe? Sulen looked at the Drow scout in surprise. Yes, sir. After careful investigation, we finally confirmed their exact number. There are about 350 of them, the Drow said respectfully. Sulen nodded. A tribe of 350 people. Are there any Minotaurs in it? Minotaurs were the name of the Minotaurs after they advanced into the legendary level. They were powerful and evil creatures. They liked to build mazes and lure their enemies into them to kill them one by one. Minotaurs were powerful and immune to mazes. Wizards' mazes were ineffective against them. They were good at using giant axes as weapons. They were cunning and evil. They were one of the monsters that adventurers did not want to encounter the most. Minotaurs were powerful and had mazes that could make people dizzy. They were very difficult to deal with. Most importantly, the rewards were very low. Unlike dragons, the Minotaurs did not like to collect treasures. Therefore, killing these monsters was often a loss. We didn't find any Minotaurs. Seems like we're in luck. This Minotaur's tribe did not give birth to such powerful creatures. Sulen held his chin with one hand and leaned back in his chair. Sir, this is the map of the Minotaur's territory. We've investigated it. There are no powerful creatures nearby. After understanding the Minotaur's strength, Sulen began to prepare to wipe out the Minotaurs. After all, not only did the Minotaurs occupy the obsidian mine, but they also captured his people. If he did not rescue them, the Grey Dwarves' loyalty would decrease. Following Sullen's orders, the war machine of Northern Battlefront City began to move. Since they were going to fight in the underground world, human spearmen were not suited for the environment. Sulen planned to use Duergar, half-elf archers, centaurs, and harpies. Humans did not have night vision, so fighting in a place like the underworld was very inconvenient. In addition to these troops, Hathaway, Chris, Karina, and Alex would also go on this expedition. Without the help of spellcasters, the Taurens would suffer a lot of casualties. Adult Minotaurs could reach the level of knights. The Minotaur warriors were generally Transcendent Tier 2, and the Berserk Minotaurs were Transcendent Tier 3. The army of Northern Battlefront City gathered quickly. There were 200 centaurs, 400 dwarven defenders, 300 half-elf archers, 100 barbarian warriors, and 3,000 harpies forming a huge team. Sulen led the army into the underground world through the connecting tunnel. This was not their first time in the underground world, so they quickly adapted to the environment. Under the lead of the Drow scouts, the army of Northern Battlefront City advanced through the tunnels toward the Minotaur's tribe. The Minotaur's tribe was northwest of the dwarf city of Orlando. They had to pass through 5 tunnels and 3 underground caverns. The underground world's terrain was complicated, so the army moved slowly. Many of the tunnels were limited in width, so only 5 people could walk side by side. The army of Northern Battlefront City was stretched into a long line. The movement of thousands of people was not small, so it naturally alerted many underground creatures. As soon as they entered the tunnel, a group of hook horrors fell from the sky. However, they could never imagine how powerful the enemy they were facing this time was. The 2-meter-tall hook horrors were shot to death in the air before they could even attack. The half-elf longbow's power could easily penetrate the armor of the dwarves at close range, so these hook horrors could block it. Moreover, the soldiers Sulen brought this time all had night vision, so those hook horrors in the dark tunnels had already been discovered by Sulen. Other than the hook horrors, there was also a group of lion-scorpion beasts living in the underground caverns. When these lion-scorpion beasts noticed the army, they immediately hid. The lion-scorpion beasts were very intelligent, so they naturally knew how to avoid danger. Sulen recorded the positions of these lion-scorpion beasts. He was prepared to see if he could tame these lion-scorpion beasts in the future. The lion-scorpion beasts were also flying mounts. Although they couldn't compare to the pterosaur, they were not any worse than the hippogriff knights and griffin knights. However, taming the lion-scorpion beasts was very difficult. Moreover, these beasts' tails could move, so the knights were worried that the lion-scorpion beasts would use their stingers to attack. After passing through an underground tunnel, the army of Northern Battlefront City finally arrived near the Minotaur's tribe. Sulen didn't immediately attack, so he let the army rest. He took out the sky illuminating lamp and released a group invisibility spell. A gray energy barrier enveloped the army of Northern Battlefront City, and in the next second, the army of Northern Battlefront City disappeared without a trace. All the soldiers began to rest. Traveling for a long time was very tiring, not to mention in a place like the underground world. The army didn't light a fire and they were very close to the Minotaur's tribe. If they lit a fire to cook, it would attract the attention of the Minotaurs. The army had brought rations with them. These rations were made by Sulen from his previous world. He used dried meat, flour, potatoes, salt, sugar, vegetable oil, and diced vegetables to make stir-fried noodles before processing them into biscuits. It can be soaked in water or eaten directly. These rations had a rough texture and the taste was not bad. Of course, according to Frodo, this was a complete waste of food, but for the army, this kind of food was very convenient. The biscuits made from stir-fried noodles were very convenient to eat. There were vegetables, salt, and diced meat inside. Not only could it fill one's stomach, it could also provide vitamins. Of course, only Northern Battlefront City would spend so much effort on rations. The rations of other countries in this world were a mess. Black bread was the norm, and sometimes they didn't even have this kind of black bread mixed with wood shavings and stones. Of course, the treatment of the elite army was very good. Northern Battlefront City's rations were not cheap, and only Sulen was rich enough to add diced meat, sugar, and vegetable oil. The cost of a single serving of rations was 2 gold nars. The army set up camp in the invisibility barrier and quietly ate the rations. After eating the rations, the army quickly took the time to rest. After the army set up camp, the drows all left to investigate the surroundings. There was no difference between day and night in the underworld. The creatures here slept according to their unique method of timing. The drows used magic pillars. Every day, the magic pillars would slowly light up from the lowest point, which meant the beginning of the day. When all the pillars lit up, it meant the end of the day, and then the magic pillars would begin to extinguish from the bottom to the top. The dwarves used mechanical timing, and at the same time, they also had magic pillars similar to the drows. Sulen didn't know the Tauren's timing tool, but he knew that it was now daytime. Sulen, who had night vision, was not affected by the darkness of the underworld. He took out a monocular made of transparent crystal. Sulen stood there and clearly saw the situation in the Tauren camp in the distance. These Taurens had just finished a hunt and were enjoying their food. Although they were far away, Sulen could still see that their prey was an underground salamander. The underground salamander was also a little overlord in the underworld, but now it had become food for the Taurens. An underground salamander was about 5 meters long. If you removed the tail that occupied half of its body would be 2 or 3 meters long. This kind of underground creature had a fierce temperament. Even the manticore didn't like to provoke them, but the drows would domesticate these underground salamanders as mounts. The strongest drows were the petrifying lizard knights, but they were rare. Generally, a petrifying lizard knight would lead a small team of underground salamander knights to form a patrol team. The underground salamanders were slightly smaller than the petrifying lizards, but they didn't have the petrifying light of the petrifying lizards. Seeing the Taurens barbecuing food, Sulen didn't continue to pay attention. When he returned to the tent, Sulen, Hathaway, Chris, and the others also began to enjoy the food. Time passed by, and soon it was night in the underworld. At this time, many animals began to come out to look for food. The camp in the northern city was still silent. A few wildebeests quickly disappeared after approaching. The Tauren tribe in the distance also quieted down. Only the tall totem pillars were still shining. Sulen waited until midnight before he began to move. 3,000 harpies flew into the sky, and Hathaway cast 2 spells to remove sound and smell. Then the group of harpies began to approach the Tauren tribe. Sulen led the dwarves in formation and began to quietly approach the camp. The half-elf archers behind him were ready. Soon, the harpies arrived above the Tauren tribe. They were very familiar with this kind of air attack. With a command, a large number of Molotov cocktails fell from the sky, and the Tauren tribe became a sea of fire in the blink of an eye. Chapter 282. Roar. A tyrannical roar echoed, followed by even more roars. With the light of the Molotov cocktails, Sulen was able to clearly see the situation of the Tauren camp. The Molotov cocktails weren't as effective as Sulen had imagined. Although they had ignited quite a few houses, the casualties of the Tauren were limited. Moreover, when the Molotov cocktails ignited the camp, a burst of ice energy suddenly appeared. Ice storm. A whirlwind made of ice and snow suddenly appeared, quickly suppressing the burning flames and extinguishing many of them. Sulen frowned. The flames of the Molotov cocktails were a lot stronger than ordinary flames, but the materials that Sulen had made were still quite different from real Molotov cocktails. Kerosene couldn't compare to gasoline, and charcoal couldn't compare to aluminum powder or rubber. Whether it was burning or sticking, it was much worse. Last time, they had succeeded in bullying the Beastmen army because there were no casters among them. Moreover, they were living in tents. Now that they had encountered a caster's spell, it was normal for it to be barely effective. The harpy retreated after throwing the Molotov cocktails. There weren't many Molotov cocktails in Western Town's northern city, mainly because kerosene was hard to find. This kind of war preparation material could only be produced in the Desert Kingdom, and it was sold in limited quantities. Sulen had saved up a lot of kerosene for a long time. He had used most of it last time when he had set fire to the Beastmen camp, and the rest had been thrown out today, so the effect was limited. With the help of the flames, Sulen saw the appearance of the Tauren. Speaking of which, this was the first time he had seen a Tauren outside of some books. Taurens weren't commonly seen on the surface, and most of them were underground creatures. Their appearance was very unique, looking like a bull that walked upright. The Tauren had a human body and was 3 meters tall. Their muscles were bulging, and they looked very powerful. They wore fine iron armor and held a shield in one hand and an axe in the other. Their axes were even bigger than the barbarians' axes. They were 2 meters long, and only these Taurens could wield them. Although they were called Taurens, they didn't inherit the gentle nature of bulls. Instead, they inherited the tyrannical side of bulls. These minotaurs were cruel and tyrannical. They loved war and killing. In fact, minotaurs had inherited a trace of demon blood. They worshipped demons and liked to capture other weak creatures as slaves. The Minotaurs worshipped the Minotaur King Buffet, the Lord of the Abyss 600th floor. These Minotaurs, who were over 3 meters tall and weighed close to 1,000 pounds, could be said to be the best heavy infantry. After putting out the fire, these Minotaurs rushed out of the camp. Looking at the tall Taurans in heavy armor and weapons, the earth trembled when they ran, and then looking at the grey dwarfs who were less than 1.5 meters tall, wearing iron armor and standing in neat rows like a group of gas tanks, Suluan felt that they were not very reliable. How do you plan to deal with those Minotaurs? Sulan looked at the grey dwarves suspiciously. When they decided to deal with the Taurans, the grey dwarves had strongly requested to participate. Although Sulan didn't think highly of the grey dwarves had clashed with the Minotaurs in the underworld before. Until Sulan took action, these grey dwarves had been doing well. They still had experience in dealing with the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs look tall and mighty, but they're just for show. When we fight them, we just roll under their legs and jump up to chop off their hind legs. The grey dwarf's commander, Barton, patted his chest and said. However, Sulan didn't think this tactic was reliable at all. Seeing Sulan's expression of disbelief, Barton continued to explain, those big guys are too big. They turn very slowly and are not as agile as us. Also, it's very inconvenient for them to attack us because we're short. We may be short, but we're agile. In order to deal with the Minotaurs, we even developed a slide kick. When the Minotaurs attack, we just slide under their legs and use our axes to attack their private parts. If we're lucky, we can even castrate them. Sulan originally thought that these grey dwarves had some kind of ultimate move to deal with the Minotaurs, but it turned out that this was it. If they were lucky, they could castrate them, but if they were unlucky, wouldn't they become snacks delivered to their doorstep? Would they be able to crush gas tanks with a single stomp of their hooves? Sulan wasn't optimistic about the grey dwarves' plan. According to what they said, if they were facing a single Minotaur, they might be able to pull it off. However, they were facing a group of Minotaurs. Sure, they might be able to dodge the first Minotaur with a slide kick, but there would be more Minotaurs behind. The Minotaur's hooves alone could trample the grey dwarves to death. After figuring out the grey dwarves' plan, Sulan didn't have much hope for them. If he let them go, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. Sulan still needed these grey dwarves to help him mine and forge equipment. How could he bear to see them die? If they were all dead, who would forge equipment for him? Where are the ballistae? Prepare to load them. Sulan ordered. All grey dwarves, fall back and get into formation. My lord, please believe in our strength. We dwarves will completely crush these idiots. Barton quickly said when he saw Sulan's stance, strongly urging them to fight. However, Sulan didn't think much of it and forbade them from acting on their own. Against the Minotaurs, Sulan's plan was to use the ballistae to attack first, then let the barbarian warriors and centaur heavy cavalry charge. Most of the barbarian warriors had leveled up to barbarian berserkers, and normal Minotaurs were no match for them. Only the berserk Minotaurs could contend with them. The centaur heavy cavalry wasn't weak either. When they ran, even the Minotaurs wouldn't be able to withstand their momentum. First, use the ballistae to disrupt the Minotaurs' formation, then use the barbarian warriors and centaur heavy cavalry to launch a surprise attack. The gnomes' archers would suppress the enemy with a rain of arrows, and the grey dwarves' defenders would attack. Sulan quickly came up with the plan. However, the casualties in a battle like this would definitely not be low. In order to reduce the casualties, he would have to rely on Chris, Hathaway, and Karina's spells. Hathaway, prepare your spells. Release them when the Minotaurs get close. Sulan called Hathaway and the others over and had them prepare their spells. Don't worry, we'll treat those Minotaurs well. Hathaway said excitedly. She was very interested in the Minotaurs right now. She planned to find a few Minotaurs' corpses and bring them to the lab for research after the battle. The underground world was very dim. Even with the fire still burning in the camp, it still looked a little hazy. Muffled sounds echoed in the underground cavern. The ground under their feet trembled slightly. The Minotaurs rushed over with a violent aura. Their 3-meter-tall bodies made them look like little giants. Even the barbarian warriors, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, stopped underestimating them. Their expressions became very serious. The Centaur heavy cavalry also had the same expression. The whole army was excited. Boost morale, advanced. Advanced group haste. AoE magic weapon. Reduce enemy defense. Rays of light flashed from Sullen's body. In an instant, all the Northern Citadel troops were buffed with all kinds of spells. The morale of the Northern Citadel troops soared. Their eyes were filled with fighting spirit as they looked at the Minotaurs in the distance. Seeing that the Minotaurs were about 400 yards away, Sulen directly cast a silent spell on the Minotaur shaman. The shaman was about to buff the Minotaur shaman when he suddenly felt a strange membrane surrounding his body. The originally active elemental energy was also blocked by this membrane. All of his spells couldn't be cast at this moment. The Minotaur shaman was directly crippled. After losing the shaman, the Minotaur's combat power was reduced by at least 20%. The Minotaurs in their berserk state began to charge. Several hundred Minotaurs in heavy armor charged forward with great momentum. The sound of their hooves hitting the ground was like muffled thunder. Ballistae, fire! Bang bang bang! With Sullen's order, 30 ballistae immediately fired. 33-meter-long spears with powerful momentum shot towards the Minotaur's army. One of the Minotaurs at the front was directly hit by a spear. Their high-quality heavy armor couldn't block the ballistae's attack. An ear-piercing metallic sound echoed. In the next second, that Minotaur's body was pierced by a ballista. Blood crazily gushed out of his body. Even the Minotaurs with powerful constitutions couldn't resist being hit by a ballista. Seeing the state of their companions, these Minotaurs became even more furious. Their chests were fiercely heaving up and down as they kept breathing out white mist from their nostrils. The hot breath they exhaled condensed into steam in the air. Their muscles bulged and their veins bulged like earthworms. Their eyes were bloodshot. The ballistae kept firing, but the quality of the Minotaur's shields was clearly very good. After piercing through the shields, the ballistae lost their penetrative power. The centaurs on the side stamped their hooves a few times and prepared to charge. Charm. At this time, Chrissy took the initiative to make a move. A pink light flashed from Chrissy's body and then swept across the Minotaurs. Immediately after, many of the Minotaurs who were charging suddenly stopped. Their originally bloodshot eyes became blank. But after a mere breath, these Minotaurs suddenly swung their axes and attacked the other Minotaurs around them. The Minotaurs who were attacked reacted quickly and raised their weapons to counterattack. In an instant, the charging Minotaur's army became chaotic. Seeing this situation, Sulen naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. He directly led the barbarians and centaurs to charge. The distance of 300 meters only took a few breaths. Sulen led the barbarians and centaurs to fiercely crash into the chaotic Minotaurs. Chapter 283. Boom! Metal clanging, the centaur heavy cavalry ferociously rammed into the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs were forced back by the powerful impact. Suluen's purple dragon halberd was like a viper. With a flash of cold light, a large amount of blood spurted from the neck of the Minotaurs. The 3-meter-tall Minotaurs were about to swing their giant axes. Their bodies swayed, and the light in their eyes dimmed. Their huge bodies fell down like a mountain of gold. The Minotaurs opened their mouths and spat out a string of red bubbles. Large amounts of blood stained the ground red. Their bodies twitched for a bit before they stopped breathing. Although the barbarians weren't as tall as the Minotaurs, their attacks were much fiercer. Their giant axes cut through the air and viciously slashed at the Minotaur's armor. Even the well-forged armor couldn't withstand the barbarians' strength. A terrifying gash was torn open, and hot blood gushed out. The Minotaurs suffered heavy losses under the combined attack of the northern battlefront city soldiers and the Minotaurs controlled by Crazy. Seduction. Just as Sulan was about to continue and kill the Minotaurs, a pink light flashed again. The Minotaurs that were fighting suddenly stopped. Everyone stop. Move back 3 meters. Crazy's voice came from midair. All the Taurans immediately stopped attacking and moved back 3 meters according to Crazy's instructions. Seeing this, Sulan was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. He knew Crazy's charm was powerful, and even women couldn't resist it. However, he didn't expect it to be this powerful. 200 to 300 Minotaurs were controlled by her charm in a row. Normal charm didn't have such a powerful effect. The reason why Crazy's charm was so powerful was because of the charm nature of her self-created hero template. Her charm, which was a self-created hero template, could directly make the enemy change sides. Coupled with the charm of a succubus, its power was even more terrifying. One had to know that even barbarians with strong will would most likely be controlled by Crazy's charm. Chris, you controlled all of them? Although Sulan had seen it, he still found it hard to believe. Of course, these calves are now my subordinates. Chris said proudly. How? How did you do it? Sulan looked at his little succubus in surprise. Crazy snorted proudly. She gently flapped her wings and landed on the ground. Minotaurs exist in the abyss as well. They have the bloodline of demons. These creatures have a natural worship for demons. If they drink demon blood and evolve into Minotaurs, it will be difficult to deal with them. But right now, ordinary Minotaurs have a hard time resisting the effects of charm. Of course, the prerequisite is that the caster is a demon, Chris said proudly as she flapped her demonic wings a few times. Looking at the brave Minotaurs standing there obediently, the people of North Town City felt a strong sense of disharmony. For them, who had just prepared for a fierce battle, it was like a dream. At the same time, it made them feel uncomfortable as if they had punched cotton with all their might. Although the two sides were on opposing sides, seeing these powerful Minotaurs being controlled so easily, even their life and death, made the surrounding troops look at Crazy with awe. Especially the barbarians who had experienced it once. When they saw Crazy's gaze, they were like mice who saw a cat. They kept quiet out of fear. Ahem, alright, everyone stop standing there. Some of you go and release the captured dwarves. Others, go and clean up the battlefield. Sulan coughed and started to do his job. Chris, you want those Minotaurs to put down their weapons. Okay. Chris nodded. She then saw the Minotaurs put down their weapons one by one. The Minotaurs didn't suffer heavy casualties. In the previous battle and the damage from the ballistae, about 30 Minotaurs had died. Some of the injured ones were saved by sullen spells. Next, Sulan led people to clean up the collection in the Minotaurs' camp. The Minotaurs were the most powerful tribe in the surrounding area, and they were a race that liked to rob and plunder. They had a very rich collection. Sulan found a lot of high-quality gems and some precious metals. The Minotaurs didn't care much about gold and silver. They mostly just robbed for the sake of looting, not for the sake of looting. The members of the chaotic evil faction didn't care about other things, so the probability of strange things appearing was the highest. Sulan wasn't surprised by anything they did. In addition to these things, there was also a lot of iron ore. The Minotaurs knew how to smelt iron and forge equipment. These things were left behind by them when they were forging equipment. There should be a lot of ore veins around this camp. The imprisoned grey dwarves were also rescued. These grey dwarves seemed to be good people. In addition to the grey dwarves, there were many other underworld races imprisoned in the Minotaurs' camp. The Minotaurs liked to enslave slaves. Basically, all the underworld races liked to do this. In addition to the grey dwarves, there were also bugbears and earth goblins. As for the weak ones, they were directly killed by the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs didn't care about the weak ones at all. Now, these slaves and the Minotaurs had all become the spoils of war of the northern town city. Sulan asked the others to clean up the battlefield. He then asked the grey dwarves to explore the ore veins and organize people to mine the obsidian. The wizard tower required a lot of obsidian, and the previous stockpile was almost used up. Looking at the tower and camp, Su Luan found that the location was pretty good. Although he hadn't finished exploring it, as far as he was concerned, the minerals here were still very rich. Su Luan was going to build a city here and then mine the surrounding mines. After arranging other things, Su Luan began to look at his harvest. The harvest this time was not bountiful. Defeating the Minotaurs only gave him 3,000 experience points. What surprised Su Luan was the 2 gold chests. He casually opened the 2 gold chests. A light flashed, and a system notification sounded in his ears. Congratulations, host. You have opened a gold chest. You have obtained the item Mount Horse tag. Congratulations, host. You have opened a gold chest. You have obtained the item 100/steel. Su Luan took out the mount plate. He had gotten one before, but it was the most common black-maned horse, which was not much different from an ordinary warhorse. But this time, the mount plate he got was the Pegasus. Su Luan looked at the Mount Horse tag in his hand. It looked ordinary, and the material was smooth. It seemed to be a type of jade, but it felt warm and comfortable. There were some cloud patterns on one side of the Mount Horse tag, and the other side was a Pegasus. The Pegasus was lifelike, as if it was going to jump out at any moment. Pegasus Mount Horse tag, after use, summon a majestic Pegasus as a mount. After riding, it can greatly increase movement speed and attack power. It can also fly. Speed plus 15. Fly, the Pegasus has the ability to fly. Space travel, can quickly escape from battle and is not affected by dimensional anchor, space imprisonment, and other spells. Looking at the attributes of the Pegasus Mount Horse tag, Su Luan was so surprised that his jaw dropped. He was still wondering what kind of mount he would get this time. He didn't expect to get such a big surprise. Su Luan still didn't have the ability to fly. Of course, with the help of the Wind Dragon flag or the Thunder Domain, he could fly for a short period of time. However, the speed was not very fast, and it would consume a lot of energy. With this Pegasus, Su Luan could fly freely in the sky. The Pegasus was much cooler than a wizard's flying broom. Compared to the adepts who rode on flying brooms and flying tools, riding a Pegasus was like comparing an Audi to an Alto. In addition to flying, the Pegasus also had a very powerful ability to travel through space. It could actually ignore the effects of spells like dimensional anchor and spatial imprisonment and directly travel through space to escape. With this ability, those sneak attacks and decapitation tactics were basically ineffective against it. Of course, this also meant that it was foolproof. The same spell in the hands of a wizard apprentice and a legendary wizard would have the same effect. Whether or not one could escape depended on the strength of both sides. Of course, with the Pegasus ability, normal legendary wizards could basically ignore it. Su Luan picked up the Pegasus Mount Horse tag and chose to use it. The tag turned into a ray of light and merged with Su Luan's body. In the next second, a portal appeared next to him, and a horse's neigh sounded. A white light flashed in front of Su Luan's eyes, and a handsome horse suddenly appeared next to him. This horse was completely white, and there was not a single trace of color on its body. Its body was tall, and its limbs were long. Its steps were light, and its muscles were well proportioned. Its eyes were bright. Even people who didn't know anything about horses could tell it was a good horse. This horse was lowering its head and rubbing Su Luan's face. Su Luan reached out his hand and stroked its mane. It was smooth and soft. It was very comfortable. After a while, Su Luan got on the horse. The Pegasus neighed and stood up like a human. Then, it dashed forward with a whoosh. The Northern Fortress city soldiers in the camp only saw a white shadow fly past them. Before they could react, the shadow had already disappeared in front of them. Su Luan could only feel the scenery in front of him quickly passing by, but he didn't feel any bumps. Even the wind in front of him didn't change. The Pegasus was running very fast. After running for a while, a pair of pure white wings suddenly appeared on its side. The Pegasus that was running directly soared into the sky. Chapter 284. Sulen only felt another force enveloping him, and then the draconic horse under him soared into the air. The heavenly horse quickly traveled through the air, and its 4 hooves were covered in clouds. The heavenly horse moved through the air as if it was walking on flat ground. Its speed increased once again, and its figure flew past the dome of the underground world like a bolt of lightning. After riding the Pegasus for 2 laps in the underground world, Sulen returned to the camp of the Taurens. The height of the underground world was limited, so the Pegasus needed to control its altitude when flying. When returning to the camp, it was still a little grumpy. Obviously, the Pegasus had not enjoyed itself enough just now. Sulen rubbed the heavenly horse's head and comforted it before walking towards the camp. "Boss, where did you find such a beautiful horse?" Johnson was about to go out when he saw Sulen bringing a horse back. The horse was pure white without a single trace of color. It was very beautiful, and people could not help but want to touch it. "Ouch!" Johnson cried out in pain. It turned out that just now, he did not succeed in touching it. Instead, he was bitten by the heavenly horse. "Hey, you want to go to the sky with a horse?" Johnson reached out and prepared to take care of the heavenly horse. Sulen looked at Johnson with a playful expression. The heavenly horse was not an ordinary horse. After the system merged with the rules of this world, it became more suitable for the growth of this plane, and the heavenly horse was the same. Sulen's heavenly horse was actually a heavenly creature. According to the division of the Magi, it should belong to the 7 hills of paradise. It was the same type of creature as the unicorn, and its strength was not weaker than the unicorn. It could be considered a type of divine creature. Although it did not have the strength of a legend rank, if you underestimated them, you would suffer a great loss. As expected, Johnson and the Pegasus fought, but in the end, he was chased and beaten up by the Pegasus. Although Johnson was strong, the Pegasus could fly, and its speed was fast, so Johnson could not catch it at all. Furthermore, this guy was very vengeful, so he used his hind hooves to fiercely hit Johnson on the head, causing a big bump to appear on Johnson's bald head, causing Sulen to want to laugh. All right, little horse." Sulen comforted the Pegasus so that it would no longer attack Johnson. Only then did the Pegasus stop attacking. Then, when Johnson wasn't paying attention, it spat saliva all over his face. "Boss, this horse is too powerful. I actually lost to a horse." Johnson rubbed his head and said with a sad face. "Be content. This is a Pegasus, a heavenly creature. It's normal that you can't beat it." Sulen glanced at him and said, "Heavenly realm creatures are amazing." Johnson curled his lips and said, feeling unconvinced in his heart. He muttered softly, "What Pegasus? To put it bluntly, it's still a horse. If it's a horse, it has to be ridden." Harumph. The Pegasus raised its 2 hooves and was about to step on him. "Good horse, don't lower yourself to his level." Sulen stroked the mane of the Pegasus and comforted it. At the same time, he quickly sent Johnson away. This guy had a big mouth. If he stayed for a while, he would definitely be beaten again. Bringing the Pegasus back to the camp, Hathaway, Chris and Karina were all very interested in the Pegasus. They were all spellcasters, so they could naturally feel that the magic energy contained in the Pegasus's body was not any weaker than theirs. "Sulen, what's going on with this horse?" Hathaway looked at the Pegasus in surprise. Sulen patted the back of the Pegasus and said proudly, "This is a Pegasus. I met it by accident. It was impressed by my wisdom and strength, so it took the initiative to ask to be my mount." Hearing Sulen's shameless words, the Pegasus could not help but roll its eyes. "This is a Pegasus?" Hathaway automatically filtered out the information in Sulen's words and stared at the Pegasus with shining eyes. As a wizard, Hathaway knew that the Pegasus and the unicorn were both heavenly creatures. Divine creatures were very rare in the material world. The unicorn was still okay. In the past, when the elf forest was not closed, there were many unicorns living there. However, since the elf forest was closed, unicorns were very rare. Another reason why there were so few unicorns was that they were often hunted by others. It could be said that every part of a unicorn's body was a treasure. The horn on its head was a very important magic material that had very special uses. Its blood also contained magic power, and many evil gods liked unicorns as sacrifices. Although unicorns were powerful, those who dared to hunt unicorns were not mediocre. Each and every one of them was naturally powerful. This was also why unicorns were so rare in the outside world. In fact, even with the protection of druids and elves, unicorns were still an endangered species in the material plane. According to a wizard who did not want to be named, there were at least a dozen magic items made from unicorns in this world. For thousands of years, the number of unicorns in the prime material plane had been in a state of slow decline. Pegasi were even rarer in the prime material plane. Su Luan's Pegasus could be said to be the only one that had appeared in the prime material plane in the past few hundred years. Didn't you see it? Su Len said proudly. Can I take some of its blood? Hathaway pulled Su Len and asked, just a little. It won't hurt. Pfft. Suddenly, the Pegasus spat at Hathaway. Haha. Seeing Hathaway's embarrassed look, Su Len couldn't help but laugh. Don't think about it. The Pegasus can understand you. Su Len saw Hathaway's angry look and said. The Pegasus is a divine creature. Its intelligence is not inferior to humans. If you want its blood, you can talk to it yourself. Su Len shrugged. Although he could force the Pegasus to cooperate, it would definitely make the Pegasus uncomfortable. Therefore, Su Len did not care and let them talk on their own. After hearing Sullen's words, Hathaway could only give up for now. However, she made up her mind to find a way to get the Pegasus's blood. Can I try riding it? Chris, who was at the side, looked at the Pegasus with shining eyes. It was obvious that she also liked this Pegasus. However, as an abyss demon, she was at odds with a heavenly realm creature. It was already good enough that the two of them did not fight when they met. It's okay. I'll talk to it later. It shouldn't be a problem. Su Len looked at the little succubus's eager expression and couldn't bear to refuse. Really? The little succubus Chris hugged Sullen's arm. The pair of D+ peaks on her body kept rubbing against him. Sullen's anger was immediately aroused. As if sensing the change in Su Len, the little succubus gently blew into his ear. Then, before Su Len could fire, she ran away. You can hide for a while, but can you hide for a while? I'll use the plasma cannon to deal with you tonight. Seeing the little succubus running away, Su Len had already made a decision in his heart. Su Luan let the Pegasus roam around the camp by itself and then returned to his room. There were still some things he needed to deal with. The first was the problem of the Minotaurs. After the previous battle, there were still 302 Minotaurs alive. They were powerful heavy infantry, and their charge was not inferior to heavy cavalry. If he could subdue them, there would naturally be many benefits. However, the problem was that these Minotaurs were all controlled by the little succubus's charm. If they broke free from the charm, they would definitely rebel. Although the probability was very low, it could not be ignored. Su Len still had no way to control them. Perhaps the concentration camp that he built to imprison the dwarves would have some effect. He planned to imprison these Minotaurs when he returned and test the effect. In addition to the problem of the Minotaurs, there was also the problem of building a city here. To be honest, with the current strength of the northern citadel, it was already very difficult to carry out multiple large-scale projects at the same time. Building a city here would be more difficult in terms of manpower and other resources. However, just now, he had read the report and map of the nearby mineral veins that the Grey Dwarves had just reported. He had decided to build a city here. It was not that he did not know that there was a shortage of manpower and resources, but there were too many good things here. Not to mention the obsidian mine, there were also mana crystals, fire copper, iron, gold, gem, silver, Kana's iron, and more than a dozen other minerals. Although he did not know the output of these mineral veins, the current minerals were enough for Su Len to build a dungeon here. There were not many other creatures in the area where the Minotaurs lived. If he wanted to build a city, he would need a lot of manpower. Su Len did not plan to transfer manpower from the surface world. After all, the northern citadel was already very busy. He planned to capture slaves in the underworld. The first batch of slaves were the ones that they had just rescued from the Minotaurs. As they were saved from the evil Minotaurs, the slaves were very grateful and wanted to repay Su Len. Since they were so enthusiastic, Su Len had no choice but to reluctantly accept them. Therefore, these people became the new city's first batch of slaves. Of course, to build a dungeon, it was not enough to rely on these people. He had to capture more slaves from the surrounding areas. Although the population of the underworld was far less than that of the surface world, there were still many options for capturing slaves. The most common ones were the hound-head men and gnomes. These two creatures were very common both on the surface world and in the underworld. Su Len also controlled a hound-head men tribe with thousands of people. He just needed to bring those hound-head men to build the dungeon. Other than the hound-head men, there were also many gnomes, cavemen, goblins, gnomes, and orcs living in the caves. Other than the information about the mineral veins, most of the surrounding topographic maps had been drawn. In the maps, Su Len found an underground lake. This was the main water source of the Tauran tribe. Other than the underground lake, the Grey Dwarves also found some broken underground ruins. However, there were some monsters around the ruins, so they did not get close. On the other side of the camp, there were a few tunnels that led to unknown places. Chapter 285. Su Len already knew about the tunnels that the Grey Dwarves had found. When he killed the necromancer last time, he learned from the necromancer's diary that the necromancer had come here from one of the tunnels. The necromancer was not a normal person. Why would a normal person keep a diary and write down everything they knew? Wasn't that helping the enemy? One of the tunnels led to the Underdark, which was the base camp of the Drows. It was much more dangerous than the underground world that Su Len now occupied. Su Len had no plans to go there for the time being. Besides, he had to guard against the enemy's sneak attack. After looking at the surrounding topographic map, Su Len was very interested in the ruins that the Grey Dwarves had found. He sent someone to summon the Grey Dwarves who had found the ruins. A few minutes later, 2 Grey Dwarves were brought in by the guards. "Is this the ruin that you found?" Su Len asked directly. "Yes, Master. When my team and I were exploring the surrounding mineral veins, we found that there were monsters gathered here. Oh, by the way, there's a tribe of goblins living near the ruins. They should know more about the ruins," the Grey Dwarf said respectfully. "Tribe of goblins? We're short of manpower here." "Capture them," Su Len said directly. It didn't take too much manpower to deal with a tribe of goblins. Su Len took 100 Grey Dwarves and 2 teams of centaurs and prepared to go. Hathaway heard that there was a ruin there and strongly wanted to go with them. The army made some simple preparations and set off quickly. Su Len rode in the middle of the team on a Pegasus, while Hathaway rode on a black-maned horse with a look of resentment. She originally wanted to ride with Su Len on the Pegasus, but the Pegasus was unwilling and wouldn't let Hathaway on it no matter what. Obviously, the little guy was still very vengeful. The underground ruins were not far from here. After passing through 2 tunnels and an underground cave, the group arrived near the underground ruins. "Master, there are the underground ruins. The goblins living here are in the northeast direction," the Grey Dwarf who acted as the guide said. "Lead the way." "Let's capture the goblins first before exploring the ruins," Su Len said with a nod. The group continued to move forward under the lead of the Grey Dwarf. The underground cavern was huge, and they could vaguely hear the sound of an underground river flowing. Moss and mushrooms grew on the ground, and on the other side of the underground cavern was a large stalactite cave. Flutter. At this time, the sound of wings flapping suddenly came from the karst cave. It seemed to be approaching here. Su Len looked up and soon saw a black cloud flying out of the dark karst cave. At the same time, there was a squeaking sound. "It's a vampire bat." Upon hearing these noises, the Grey Dwarves immediately reacted. As underground creatures, they were very familiar with the sounds of vampire bats. Vampire bats were notorious in the underground world. Individually, they weren't strong, but there were too many of them. Every time they moved out, there would be tens of thousands of them. Furthermore, they liked to swarm the enemy when they attacked. These palm-sized bats were extremely ferocious. Even an elephant would be sucked dry of blood in less than a minute. Due to their large numbers, small size, and agile bodies, they were very difficult to deal with for ordinary creatures. As soon as he finished speaking, the thousands of vampire bats quickly flew over. At the same time, these vampire bats continuously emitted strange sound waves. Although these sound waves couldn't be heard, they made people feel dizzy and uncomfortable. Ice storm. Thunderstorm. A tornado formed by ice blades suddenly appeared. Along with the sharp ice blades, large numbers of vampire bats were cut into pieces and fell to the ground. For a moment, the surrounding air was filled with the smell of blood. Then, a dazzling flash of lightning appeared. Accompanied by the roar of thunder, large numbers of lightning snakes jumped and swam in the sky. The vampire bats that had just flown over were immediately turned into charcoal by the lightning snakes and fell to the ground. Soon, the ground was covered with a layer of vampire bat corpses. After clearing out the vampire bats, the army continued forward. After more than an hour, Sulen finally saw the underground ruins. The gnome tribe was about 2 to 3 kilometers away from the ruins. Without stopping, the army launched an attack on the gnome tribe. There were many bugbears and earth goblins in the tribe. These bugbears were about 1.6 meters tall and were much stronger than their cousins, the green goblins. Moreover, they were very disciplined. After discovering that someone was attacking, they quickly formed a simple spear formation. Although most of their weapons were bone spears or rusted metal, it wasn't easy to form a formation in such a short time. However, the gnomes were still gnomes. Although their neat formation made them look threatening, under the superior weapons and armor of the dwarves and the arrows of the centaurs, the bugbears were quickly scattered and captured. Seeing that the battle was over, Sulen stepped forward and asked, "Which one of you is the leader?" The gnomes looked at each other, but no one answered his question. "Sir, the gnomes don't speak the surface language," a grey dwarf whispered to Sulen. Sulen was a little embarrassed. Fortunately, the light was dim, so no one could see clearly. "Ahem, Hathaway, cast language proficiency on me." Sulen coughed. Hathaway held back her laughter and cast language proficiency on Sulen. Sulen asked the gnomes again. "Sir, our leader has just been killed by you." A gnome trembled as he spoke. "All right, which one of you knows the specific situation of the ruins?" Sulen changed his question. "Sir, Borat is the most familiar with the ruins," a gnome stepped forward and said. "You are Borat?" Sulen asked. "I am, sir," the gnome said flatteringly. Sulen nodded and said, "How much do you know about the ruins?" "Sir, there is a devil's curse in the ruins. You will be affected by the curse if you go near it. There are also many terrifying monsters in there." "Devil's curse?" Sulen raised his eyebrows. "It's a devil's curse. People who go near it will be cursed. Their bodies will become weak and their minds will go crazy. Some people will mutate and become horribly twisted. However, without exception, they will become crazy. The monsters in there are also very crazy, but the strange thing is that these monsters will not leave the area. The curse will weaken after leaving the area. Bring us there. According to what you said, there won't be any big problems in a short time," Sulen said directly. He then waved his hand and left some soldiers to watch over the captives. He then led the rest to the ruins. As for Borat's objection, it was directly ignored. "Hathaway, come with me. I keep feeling that there is something wrong with the devil's curse." "Okay." Soon, the group was divided into 2 groups again. More than half of them stayed in the gnome tribe to watch over it. Sulen led 2 groups of grey dwarves and a group of centaurs to the ruins. As Sulen's group approached the ruins, they could see many broken walls scattered on the ground. These buildings had been there for a long time and were severely damaged. It was impossible to recognize their original appearance. Many places were in a mess. It seemed that other people had been here to search. This situation was normal. It would be abnormal if no one came to search the ruins. They did not waste any time outside the ruins. They continued to go deeper into the ruins. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Some faint sounds came from the ruins. Sulen waved his hand and signaled everyone to stop. Soon, a huge black shadow rushed toward them. It's the death pincers. Run. When Borat saw the black shadow, he was so scared that he turned around to run. Unfortunately, as soon as he turned around, a gray dwarf soldier beside him kicked him to the ground. Then, a sharp axe was placed against his neck. If he runs again, cut off his legs. Sulen said coldly. Yes, sir. As soon as the voice faded, the rocks in front were all smashed away by the shadow. Then, a huge 8-legged armored creature appeared in front of them. It had a pair of exaggeratedly huge jaws in its mouth, and its huge mouth was filled with sharp teeth. Its whole body was wrapped in a layer of black carapace, and it rushed forward violently. Hiss! When the gray dwarves saw this ferocious-looking insect, they all gasped. This thing was too big. It was even bigger than an elephant. The death pincers. Mutated creature, challenge rating 12+. The huge monster in front of them was actually a type of mutated insect. It had mutated because of the mana pollution radiation. Its huge jaws could easily bite a dwarf's armor in half. At the same time, its body had a strong defense. Its carapace had a layer of metallic luster, and its vitality was also very strong. For the gray dwarves, this type of mutated monster was still a big threat. However, it was unlucky to encounter Sulen. A monster of this level would only give him some extra loot. Lightning spear. A spear made of lightning suddenly appeared. A large amount of lightning gathered, and in the next second, the lightning spear instantly hit the charging death pincers. The huge death pincer worm's body instantly stiffened, and a fist-sized hole appeared in its hard carapace. Then, its entire body was covered in lightning, and its 8 legs twitched a few times before it collapsed with a loud bang. A large amount of blood gushed out. The death pincers was done for. He waved his hand and asked a few gray dwarves to drag the body of the death pincers over. The meat of this kind of beetle was inedible, but its carapace was still a good material. It was suitable to be used to make shields or armor. Chapter 286. Sulen looked at the map. There were many red dots on the map. Be careful. There are many other mutant creatures here. After dealing with the loot, the group continued forward. 2 gray dwarves escorted an earth goblin in front, followed by Sulen and Hathaway. We can't go any closer. If we go any further, we'll be in the territory of the ghosts, Borat said in horror after moving forward for a while. There are a lot of ghosts. Once we enter, they'll pounce on us like crazy. Ghosts? Sulen's eyes lit up. Ghosts, the undead creatures, were most often found in mass graves or cemeteries without priests to purify them. They were also found in areas where a large number of creatures had died. It was easy for them to be born in areas where the aura of the undead was strong. Ghosts usually appeared at night, but there was no sun in the underground world. They could appear at any time. There were many types of ghosts, but they all had one thing in common. They had something that they couldn't let go of. It was called obsession or resentment. It was said that if you helped a ghost fulfill its obsession or resentment, you could get a reward from the ghost, such as a high-grade soul crystal. Of course, it was very difficult to fulfill the obsession of a ghost. After all, after turning into a ghost, they had basically lost their rationality. It was not easy to know their obsession and fulfill it. Sulen needed a lot of soul crystals now. Now that he encountered a ghost, he naturally wouldn't let it go. He ignored the earth goblin's cries and directly led him into the territory of the ghosts. As soon as he entered, Su Len felt the obvious difference. The temperature here was a few degrees lower than outside. There was a sudden fog in the surroundings. He didn't know when it started, but there were gusts of cold wind. It seemed that countless people were crying softly. How many people died here? It's a land of the undead. Su Len said in surprise after noticing the surroundings. I feel at least 100 ghosts here, Hathaway said with a frown. Faintly discernible shadows appeared in the mist. They were like wandering ghosts. At this moment, Su Len suddenly felt his vision blur. The next second, the scenery around him changed completely. When his vision was restored, he found himself in the middle of a starry sky. The scenery around him changed rapidly. For a moment, he saw high-rise buildings and heavy traffic. For a moment, he saw a bustling city in Middle World. At this moment, Su Len felt like he was watching an unedited movie. He saw the mature and beautiful Lady Elizabeth J. of Cullen City. Her body was as hot and tempting as ever. She begged him to stay, and she was willing to be his mistress. Even the other nobles in Cullen City expressed their support for him to become the new governor. The next second, he appeared in the office again. He ate and worked hard at the same time. It can actually reflect the memories in my heart. This is no longer something that a spirit can do. Seeing the various scenes in front of him, Su Len quickly reacted. What he encountered this time was actually a ghost with the ability to dream. This kind of ghost with the ability to peek into the deepest memories in people's hearts, and then according to these memories, weave the most unforgettable scene in one's heart, the most desired scene. Once you were immersed in this dream of nothingness, it was very likely that you would never wake up. It would use the most terrifying scene in your memory to completely defeat you when you were the most immersed in it, and then turn you into resources for its continued growth. However, this spirit with the ability to dream probably didn't expect Su Len's dream to be so different. On one side, it was the current technological society. On the other side, it was the middle world's magical world. They were two completely unrelated worlds, which gave Su Len the feeling that several completely unrelated movies had been randomly edited and spliced together. The state of the movie was too bad, and the story was too bad. How could he be immersed in it? It's better to be a good editor who can use the ability to dream. Su Len shook his head and sighed with emotion. At this moment, the spirit controlling the dream seemed to have finally made a decision. Su Len's vision turned black, and the next second, he appeared in a strange yet familiar place. Little Su, help me send this document to Mr. Wang. Little Su, this is your performance pay for this month. Check it. Little Su, the final payment of Mr. Zhang's order from last time hasn't arrived yet. Hurry him up. All kinds of noises sounded. Su Len's eyes were a little confused. Little Su, what's wrong? Are you too tired? A woman in her 30s patted Su Len's shoulder. Nothing, I was distracted, sisterly, Su Len said casually. After a busy day, Su Len dragged his tired body back home. Su Len's house was in an old neighborhood. It was a neighborhood built by the textile factory in the 80s of his previous world. Although it was old, when he stepped into the house, his heart was filled with warmth. Mom, I'm back, Su Len shouted. Little treasure, you're back. I'll heat up the food for you. Mrs. Su took off her reading glasses and stood up from the sofa. When she saw her son's smiling face, she turned around and prepared to go to the kitchen. Mom, don't bother. I'll do it myself. Why aren't you asleep at this hour? Where's Dad? Su Len quickly asked. Your Uncle Zhang asked him to go over and help. He'll be back in a while. Su Len skillfully heated up the food and started eating. It was still that familiar taste. As always, it was disgusting. Su Len, who had eaten this dish for more than 20 years, habitually complained. Soon, Mr. Su returned from outside. I've told old Zhang that I'll go to work with him tomorrow. Dad, you're already 60 years old. Why are you still going to work? Can't you just rest at home? Su Len put down the bowl and said. What rest? You've been retired for half a year. You're 28 years old this year. It's time to find a partner and get married. If you don't have some money, how can you get a wife? Besides, there's still your brother. How can I rest? Mr. Su directly retorted. In the following days, Su Len was busy with work every day. When he returned home, although life was tough, he still felt very warm. On this day, after having dinner with his family, Su Len slowly stood up. Mom, Dad, little brother, I'm leaving. Take care. Little brother, I'm not here anymore. I'll have to trouble you to take care of Mom and Dad in the future. Little treasure, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me. Mrs. Su's face changed and she asked anxiously. What nonsense are you talking about? Mr. Su's face darkened. Brother, don't tell me you owe money? Su Jing asked. Goodbye. Although I can't bear to part, it's time for me to leave. Su Len smiled faintly and reflected the scene in front of him in the depths of his mind. There was a flash of light. The whole world was like a mirror. In an instant, it shattered into pieces and all the images disappeared. Once again, a gray fog appeared in front of him. A flash of lightning pierced through the surrounding fog. Su Len glanced around. The others were still trapped in their own dreams and had not woken up. Su Len only broke the dream that trapped him. If the others wanted to come out, they had to break the dream themselves or get rid of the person who created the dream. I should thank you for letting me see them again. Now, it's time to end it. Faintly discernible shadows appeared. In the next second, these shadows quickly gathered in the middle. Evil thoughts and spiritual attacks continuously attacked Sullen's mind. If a person with a weak willpower encountered such a powerful spiritual attack, they would easily be attacked by this powerful spiritual attack and become an idiot. However, this time, the spiritual attacks failed. All the spiritual attacks were like clay oxen entering the sea. After entering Sullen's body, they disappeared without a trace. A strange person with countless faces appeared in front of him. His face was constantly changing. Happiness, anger, sadness, joy, all kinds of expressions appeared alternately. With the appearance of the figure, the surrounding cold aura instantly intensified by more than 10 times. Some frost seemed to have appeared on the ground, and the entire space was shrouded in extremely dense negative energy. Thousand-faced Soul Eater. When he saw this figure, Su Len recognized this monster. This was a very powerful type of spirit creature. In fact, it was not just a spirit, but a monster formed by the fusion of hundreds and thousands of spirits. Its most bizarre ability was to manipulate dreams. Even a legendary spellcaster would fail miserably at such an easy task. Su Len was not affected by it. On one hand, he had the memories of his previous life and the memories of his current life. The difference between the two was too big. He could easily escape from the dream. On the other hand, he had the Iron Will attribute. With this attribute, his spiritual resistance was shockingly high. Perhaps other legendary wizards would find it difficult to deal with the thousand-faced Soul Eater, but Sullen's ability just happened to be able to suppress it. Spiritual attack. Life siphon. Streaks of spiritual energy turned into countless spikes and rushed towards Su Len. This was the manifestation of spiritual interference. At the same time, a ferocious ghost face appeared beside Su Len. It then took a deep breath towards Su Len. Little bits of green life force floated out from Sullen's body. However, in the next second, a bolt of lightning suddenly shot out from his body and instantly hit the ferocious ghost face. Lightning domain. Dazzling lightning shot out from Sullen's body. The surrounding attacks were instantly torn to pieces. Lightning spear. A large amount of lightning quickly gathered in Sullen's hand. A lightning spear completely condensed from lightning appeared in his hand. The lightning spear pierced through the mist and instantly hit the figure. The azure lightning power exploded in an instant. Countless lightning snakes wreaked havoc in the surrounding space. Even the thick aura of death was torn to pieces at this moment. Screams filled with unwillingness and hatred raged in the ears. Chapter 287. Death Gaze. A black ray of light suddenly appeared and hit Sulen directly in the next second. Sulen only felt a chill in his body, and the power of thunder in his body instantly burst out, directly dispersing the energy with the aura of death. Feeling the aura of death, Sulen also broke out in a cold sweat. Death Gaze was a very dangerous ability that completely ignored defense. It only had one effect, which was instant death. The enemy hit by this ability would go through a judgment of death. If the judgment failed, then even if the enemy was a giant dragon, they would die immediately. Of course, the probability of this judgment of death was very low, but its effect was also very scary. It was impossible to gamble with one's life every time. The probability of the judgment of death was related to the level of both sides, as well as spell resistance, physique, and many other factors. Sulen did not expect that the thousand-faced soul eater in front of him would have this skill. Of course, there were also many creatures that were immune to death gaze, such as gods and demigods who only had divinity. They were immune to this skill, and there were also undead, golems, and elemental creatures that were immune to the instant death effect. After seeing this skill, Sulen's vigilance increased greatly. Lightning flashed. Thunder prison. A thunderbolt as thick as a bucket fell from the sky and instantly hit the thousand-faced soul eater. The thunderbolt turned into thunder and lightning, enveloping the entire area in it. The thousand-faced soul eater suddenly let out a painful howl, and a large number of ghosts flew out of its body. Then, they were instantly enveloped by the surrounding power of thunder and lightning. The undead aura on these ghosts quickly disappeared under the power of thunder and lightning. After opening the thunder and lightning domain, the surrounding space had completely turned into a world of thunder and lightning, with countless bolts of lightning swimming in the air. The thousand-faced soul eater noticed that its power was getting weaker and weaker. According to this process, it would not be long before it was directly purified. Faced with such a crisis, the thousand-faced soul eater naturally would not wait for death. Countless bodies made up of ghosts kept changing, trying to break through the thunder and lightning cage. Every time it collided with the thunder and lightning, it would consume some of its power. Soul howl. A wave of soul power instantly erupted from the thousand-faced soul eater. Sulen felt as if his head was suddenly being hammered by a dozen hammers. Intense pain wreaked havoc in his mind. After a while, the pain disappeared. Sulen felt a warm sensation at the tip of his nose. He reached out and touched it. A large amount of blood was oozing out of his nostrils. Damn it! Sulen's expression was ugly. The howling of the soul had almost driven Sulen crazy. He didn't want to experience that kind of pain again. Under the attack just now, Sulen's thunder prison also weakened. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the thousand-faced soul eater forcefully escaped from the thunder prison after consuming a large number of spirits. In the next second, strange weeping sounds could be heard. In the land of the undead, the fog appeared again. Blurry figures also appeared in the fog. These figures wandered around Sulen and let out evil grins. Many spirits even wanted to suck the life energy from Sulen. However, as the thunder and lightning on Sulen's body surged again, the spirits that couldn't dodge in time were instantly enveloped by the thunder and lightning. The bodies made of fog instantly exploded. Then, the spirits that were further away screamed in horror and fled from Sulen's surroundings. Thunderbolt. After the thousand-faced soul eater escaped from the thunder prison, it instantly blended into the surrounding spirits. With the help of the spirit's disguise, Sulen could not find its true body. Seeing this situation, the thunder and lightning energy in Sulen's body quickly circulated. The powerful thunder and lightning energy erupted again. A thundercloud shrouded the sky and a large amount of thunder and lightning kept rolling. In the next second, hundreds of thunder and lightning bolts fell from the sky and enveloped the entire space. The spirits in this space were all enveloped by the thunder and lightning. Ordinary spirits couldn't withstand the thunder and lightning attack at all. In an instant, a large number of spirits were killed. Sulen looked around and instantly saw the figure of the thousand-faced soul eater. Found you. With a flash of thunder and lightning, Sullen's body disappeared in an instant. In the next second, he appeared in front of the thousand-faced Soul Eater. Thunderstorm. Powerful thunder and lightning energy came from Sullen's body and then exploded in an instant. The dazzling thunder and lightning directly lit up the dark underground space. Thunder Spear. A spear condensed from thunder and lightning appeared in Sullen's hand. This time, he didn't throw it. Instead, he directly grabbed the thunder spear and stabbed the thousand-faced Soul Eater. The powerful thunder and lightning energy directly exploded in the body of the thousand-faced Soul Eater. Roar. With a miserable howl, the thousand-faced Soul Eater's body exploded like fireworks. Countless shadows flew out of her body. The thunder and lightning completely tore her body apart. In the end, countless spirits were purified by the thunder and lightning energy. The surrounding death energy dissipated and the fog dispersed. Figures appeared in this space. These figures looked at Sulen blankly. They seemed to want to say something, but in the next second, countless spiritual lights dissipated with the wind. These spirits that were once trapped here were completely freed by the thunder and lightning energy. However, because their souls were also destroyed, they directly entered the Origin Sea and formed a new soul in the Origin Sea. After all the spirits dispersed, the shadow of a middle-aged man in his 40s appeared in front of Sulen. This middle-aged man should be a spellcaster. After bowing to Sulen in an ancient wizard's way, he turned into countless light spots and scattered with the wind. "Thank you." There seemed to be a weak voice in his ear. The voice was ethereal and almost inaudible. Clang. With a soft sound, a purple crystal fell to the ground. This was not condensed by Sullen's soul energy. Instead, it was left behind by the thousand-faced Soul Eater. This kind of soul crystal could only be condensed after the death of a high-grade spirit body. It contained the final essence of a spirit, and its quality was much higher than that of a man-made soul crystal. Sulen reached out and picked up the soul crystal. The purple soul energy in the soul crystal was pure and transparent. This was a legendary grade soul crystal. Felix's Longing, legendary grade soul crystal. This was the soul crystal condensed by the Arcanist Felix's soul energy. It contained his infinite longing. Felix was the original main body of the thousand-faced Soul Eater. He was a powerful Arcanist, but for some unknown reason, he died here. However, for some unknown reason, this Arcanist's soul turned into a ghost. Then, over the past few thousand years, he devoured countless souls and finally became the thousand-faced Soul Eater. In the end, he was freed in Sullen's hands. This soul crystal still contained the last remnants of his longing. The emotions on it seemed to be able to affect Sullen's emotions. After dealing with the thousand-faced Soul Eater, the fog dissipated. The land of the undead was also purified by Sullen's lightning domain. All the negative energy was dispelled, and the area became normal again. At the same time, after the death of the thousand-faced Soul Eater, the northern city soldiers and gnomes who had fallen into the dream woke up one after another. However, many of them were still in a daze. It was obvious that they had not woken up from the dream. Hathaway slowly opened her eyes. At this moment, many images flashed through her eyes. It was just a dream after all. Hathaway sighed softly. She quickly recovered. After Hathaway woke up, the others also woke up one after another. However, none of them looked good. It was obvious that the dream they had just experienced was not good. "Is that specter dead?" Hathaway asked. "It's already dead. I didn't expect this specter to evolve into a rare monster like the thousand-faced Soul Eater. It even has the ability to dream." Sulen said slowly, nodding slightly. "Let's take a break. We'll continue our journey." After the nightmare, although the group did not feel tired physically, they did not feel good mentally. After all, it took a lot of courage to face the thing they feared the most in the dream. Of course, it was not that there were no benefits at all. After going through the training of the dream, the spirit attribute would increase slightly. An increase of 1 or 2 points was not bad. Of course, if one was extremely lucky, they could also obtain the innate talent of strong will. However, Su Len and the others were not very lucky. None of them had awakened the innate talent of strong will. After resting for a while, the group continued to move forward into the ruins. Some mutated insects and giant centipedes appeared. These things were not very strong. Su Len did not have to do anything. They were all taken care of by Hathaway, the Grey Dwarf, and the centaurs. As they continued to go deeper, more and more dilapidated ancient buildings appeared before Sullen's eyes. Su Len even recognized some mining equipment. However, after thousands of years, these equipment had become seriously rusty. Other than being melted down and reforged, there was no other use for them. The ruins were probably built on a vein of ore. Su Len and the others found many mines, but the equipment inside had long decayed. Some of the mines had also collapsed. Su Len picked up some ores to check, but he did not find much. The ores were very pure. It seemed that the ancient arcanists had been mining here for a long time. The veins near the surface were basically all mined. Now, many of these mines had become the nests of underground creatures. Su Len did not destroy the nests. He led the group deeper. Soon, Su Len found some magic lamps left on some stone pillars. These magic lamps had lost their power and could not work. Some were completely broken. There were some damaged walls and machinery around. This seemed to be the mine's factory. There were many traces of battle in this area. It was unknown who left them behind. There was a big explosion on the side. Many of the factory's walls were blown up, but they could still see the magnificence of this building. After arriving here, Su Len also felt the energy that shrouded this place. It made him feel a little depressed. Chapter 288. The area of the ruins was very large, and the periphery was a mining area. Su Len found a lot of railroad tracks and mining equipment, but they had all been abandoned. Su Len and the others did not stay there and continued to move deeper into the ruins. What's this? Su Len suddenly saw a flash of metal on the ground next to him. A Grey Dwarf next to him was very perceptive. He went up the wall and picked up the piece of metal from the rubble. The metal was a fragment of something unknown. Although it was damaged, there was no rust on the surface. The color was somewhat like gold, but the color was a little dim. This is arcanite, an alloy made in the era of the Arcane Empire. It can be used to replace adamantine. Of course, its effect is still not as good as adamantine, but its price is very low compared to adamantine, so it was widely used in many places in the Arcane Empire. Hathaway took a look and immediately identified the material of the metal. But this is because the ancient arcanists were rich. Now this arcanite is traded at the Wizard Fair for 500 kinner per pound. The piece of arcanite found by Su Len was the size of a fist and weighed about 2 pounds. We just came in and we already have such a harvest. It seems that this secret realm is going to be rich. After passing through the ruins, everything around them was quickly displayed in front of them. This was a very large plaza. Behind the plaza was a dilapidated adept tower. The tower had been broken, and only a dozen meters high was left. The upper part was completely destroyed, and the square was full of broken walls. There were still some passages near the plaza, and there were many buildings in the surroundings. However, most of these buildings had already collapsed, and only a few of them were still relatively intact. These relatively intact buildings were not simple. Unsurprisingly, there were traces of arcane spells here. Intruders detected. Intruders detected. Reserve energy activated. Defensive magic-powered guards activated. A cold mechanical voice sounded. Suddenly, a dull sound came from the wall in front of them, and then several tall shadows appeared. There were not many of them, only 6 of them, but their aura was quite amazing. The whole ground trembled slightly. What? What are these? Several Grey Dwarves looked at the golems that came out and swallowed unconsciously. These are puppet golems from the era of the Arcane Empire. Su Len explained. Be careful, these guys aren't easy to deal with. Sulen was very surprised by the technology of the Arcane Kingdom. After thousands of years, the golem puppets passed down from the era of the Arcane Kingdom could still move. Target locked. Execute the attack order. After the golems locked onto Sulen and the others, they picked up their weapons and charged at them. These golems were different from the steel golems they had seen in the ruins of the secret realm. They were yellowish-green in color and looked like they were made of bronze. The 6 steel golems rushed up, and the dwarven defenders immediately raised their shields and rushed over. Clang! There was an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing, and the dwarf warrior's axe hit the leg of the steel golem and bounced off. Not a single mark was left on the golem's body. Be careful, attack their joints. Sulen's figure flashed and rushed up. The purple dragon halberd drew an arc and instantly hit the chest of a puppet golem. The chest of the puppet golem was directly pierced, and at the same time, a powerful force of thunder and lightning broke out in an instant, destroying the runic array in the puppet golem. The eyes of the 3-meter-tall puppet golem flickered a few times and then dimmed. A gray dwarf rushed up, but before he could attack, he was kicked out by the puppet golem. Fortunately, the dwarves were all wearing heavy armor. Although they looked a little embarrassed, in fact, their lives were not in danger. Although these steel golems were strong, they were naturally not enough to face Sulen, a legendary strongman. After a while, the 3 puppet golems stopped moving. Although it seemed easy for Sulen to deal with these puppet golems, in fact, if ordinary adventurers encountered these golems, they would be in big trouble. The alloy steel craftsmanship of the era of the Arcane Kingdom could not be damaged by ordinary weapons. In many cases, even if the weapons were scrapped, they might not be able to destroy the golems. If one had to find an adjective to summarize it, it would be to use cold weapons to dismantle a tank. Golems were very resistant to spells and could ignore most of the negative states. To deal with them, in addition to blocking them, they could only break them down. Stone to mud. Hathaway's hand flashed, and then she gently pointed. The foot of another puppet golem that was attacking suddenly softened, and the originally hard rock turned into a muddy swamp. In a breath, the puppet golem sank into the swamp. Although the puppet golems were powerful, they had no place to borrow strength in the swamp and could only slowly descend. If they had enough energy, they could use energy to get out of here. Unfortunately, after thousands of years, it was a miracle that these golems could be activated, let alone have enough energy. Then Hathaway flashed a few more spells, and the remaining 2 golems were all trapped. The 3 puppet golems kept struggling in the swamp, but it was to no avail. After a while, these golems should have run out of energy and were completely motionless. These golems were brought back when we left. Many of the steel golems from the era of the Arcane Empire were lost in craftsmanship. I want to try and see if I can find the answer from them, Hathaway said after dealing with a few golems. Well, when we go back, we'll fish them out. Sulen nodded and said. Let's go. Let's see what's in this ruin. Sulen was still in a good mood after dealing with these golems. Sulen had already felt that the ruins were shrouded in a strange energy. He didn't know what it was that the ancient arcanists had built, but it was still effective until now. After entering the houses that were relatively well preserved, they didn't find anything valuable. After thousands of years, very few things could be preserved in good condition. There were a few pieces of armor that seemed to be well preserved, but when they were picked up, they were rusted beyond recognition. A gentle poke would leave a hole. After coming out of these houses, Sulen walked to the wizard tower next to him. In fact, he didn't have much hope. The wizard tower was even more damaged, and there were even fewer valuable things. Walking into the broken wizard tower, Sulen saw a large number of strange bottles and jars. The things inside had been completely decayed, and their original appearance could not be seen. He pushed open the small door next to him, and there was a laboratory behind the small door. In the middle of the room, there was a test bench with a lot of books on the shelves next to it. There were also a lot of materials under it. Although these materials looked intact, they instantly turned into a cloud of dust with a gentle touch. Some strange organs were sealed in some crystal vessels next to it, He didn't know what kind of creature they belonged to. These things had also completely lost their effectiveness due to the loss of magic power. Although many things here were completely damaged, Su Len still found some experiment logs. These experiment logs should be more important information, and they were recorded in a specially processed notebook. Arcane Calendar 1025, 12th of September, I found a special mineral in the underground mineral base in the north. When I first saw this mineral, I noticed that it was different. I swear, this is a brand new metal, and it also has other energy. Arcane Calendar 1025, October 3rd, I extracted 3 kilograms of metal from a ton of ore. This is a silver-white metal. Although I don't know the characteristics of this metal, I think I'm going to be rich this time. Next year on the Arcane Voice, I'll be on the cover. There was a missing part in the middle, as if it was erased by some force. Arcane Calendar 1026, May 8th, my discovery really surprised the people of the Nine Ring Council. They recognized my discovery, but they were unwilling to continue the research. They also warned that this metal is very dangerous. *T, these people are jealous of my research success and want me to give up. Then they will get the fruits of my labor. I will never let them succeed. Arcane Calendar 1026, October 13th, this is really a great metal. It can accelerate the mutation of species. A ferocious bear can actually overturn a ground dragon after mutation. This is really a great discovery. If we use it to cultivate our warriors, we will easily gain a lot of combat power. Year 1027 of the Arcana calendar, 2nd of March, my first experiment failed. Although Bane's body had strengthened a lot, there were problems with his mind. He became manic and irritable, and his body after the mutation was not as perfect as I thought it would be. Well, I admit that it is very imperfect. Arcane Calendar 1027, April 7th, the experiment failed again. Bane's body also has problems. His body began to age rapidly and even deformed. Arcane Calendar 1027, May 2nd, the Nine Ring Tower sent people to investigate. Fortunately, I was prepared in advance. They did not find out about my research. This group of stubborn old people should have been in their coffins long ago. Arcane Calendar 1027, August 6th, why is this? I experimented on insects. Those insects successfully broke through the limit and became bigger and stronger, but why did it fail on humans? Year 1027 of the Arcana calendar, December 23rd. I'm a genius. I've succeeded. I've succeeded in making a slave strong. It won't be long before my experiment will make those people's jaws drop. Year 1028 of the Arcana calendar, February 4th. My experiment seems to have succeeded. That slave has started to change. Today was really dangerous. There was actually a slave who wanted to escape. I killed that slave and made him into a specimen to scare the other slaves. Chapter 289. Su Len was very satisfied after looking at the stats of the item. This weapon was tailor-made for him. The power of thunder combined with Sullen's own thunder territory made him even more powerful. Next, he would have to face the troll tribe. To Sullen's surprise, Xian brought the caravan back. The snow that fell 2 days ago did not cover the entire northern wasteland. At least, Xian and the caravan did not encounter it. As for why they were late, it was because there were too many people in the caravan. They spent too much time arranging the caravan. This time, the caravan spent 15,000 kinnar and brought back more than 2,000 slaves. In addition to the normal slaves, Xian also bought more than 300 artisan slaves with various skills. They were only able to buy so many artisan slaves with the help of the caravan that cooperated with the northern fortress. Otherwise, they would not have been able to buy them at all. There were also many refugees that followed them here. After a few months of advertising, the northern fortress had gained a lot of fame. Many refugees that could not survive were willing to follow the caravan to the northern fortress. The anti-theft chapter will be changed in 10 minutes. Please support the original version. Go to Chidian or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will automatically refresh after 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be changed in 10 minutes. Please support the original version. Go to Qidian or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will automatically refresh after 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be changed in 10 minutes. Please support the original version. Go to Qidian or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will automatically refresh after 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be changed in 10 minutes. Please support the original version. Go to Qidian or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will automatically refresh after 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be changed in 10 minutes. Please support the original version. Go to Qidian or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will automatically refresh after 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be changed in 10 minutes. Please support the original version. Go to Qidian or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will automatically refresh after 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be changed in 10 minutes. Please support the original version. Go to Qidian or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will automatically refresh after 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Qidian Reading or QQ bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. The anti-theft chapter will be revised in 10 minutes. Dear readers, please support the original version. Head to Chidian Reading or QQ Bookstore to view it. Writing is not easy, please understand. It will be refreshed in 10 minutes. Chapter 290. Move this body over. This creature doesn't seem to be that simple, Hathaway suddenly said just as the Durgars were about to skin the monsters. 2 Durgars carried the body over. Hathaway threw the monster's body directly on the workbench, then took out a space bag, took out a knife, pliers, tweezers, and a bunch of professional tools for dissecting, and then put on a protective suit. The whole process took only 2 minutes to complete. You want to dissect them? Sulen asked in surprise. Yes, this creature is a newly discovered creature. I need to understand its body structure and value, Hathaway said without looking up. Then she snapped her fingers, and an energy shield wrapped the monster's body. She then put on gloves and was ready to dissect it. Sulen looked around and looked at Hathaway. A 36D cutie bear girl suddenly took out a bunch of knives to dissect a monster. It was a bit strange. Hathaway didn't notice Sulen's expression. After getting ready, she began to dissect. As an alchemist, Hathaway was also very familiar with dissection. She accurately found the easiest part to dissect, and then quickly dissected the monster's body. Seeing her neat movements, Sulen suddenly felt a chill on his back. He watched as Hathaway dissected a complete body into pieces like a butcher dissecting an ox, and the internal organs were also placed aside. The scales on the monster's body were also separated, and the whole workbench was filled with various internal organs and materials of the monster. After dissecting, Hathaway took out some research tools like a microscope and other equipment from the space bag, and then began to analyze the materials. Seeing that Hathaway was busy, Sulen didn't want to disturb her. He could only start to search the ruins. "Sir, we found some strange devices." At this time, a Durgars ran over to report. "Strange devices? Over there." Sullen's eyes lit up. The devices in the ruins were left behind from the time of the Arcane Empire, and many of the technologies were still not mastered. If they could find something good to study or repair, they might get unimaginable benefits. In the basement over there. Under the lead of the Durgars, Sulen came to the abandoned building that was still intact. There was a staircase extending downwards in the building, and they went down the stairs to the basement. Because it had been closed for a long time, the air in the basement was very turbid. Sulen snapped his fingers and summoned 2 wind elementals to clean up the dust around them. At the same time, fresh air. The basement area was very large. Sulen roughly observed it. It was the size of a football field. After entering, Sulen clearly felt that the strange energy was getting stronger and stronger. Summoning a ball of light, Sulen began to observe the strange mechanical structure in the basement. It was made of red crystal mixed with a pale gold alloy. Sulen carefully observed for a while and found that the structure of the device was not complicated. Combined with his knowledge of magic and machinery, Sulen roughly judged that it was a device used to amplify the energy field, and the range of coverage was just the range of the ruins. "What is this device used for?" Sulen frowned and then came to the middle of the device. The device was not damaged and was still working. After circling around the device, Sulen found the core of the device. After hesitating for a moment, Sulen opened the core of the device. The outer shell of the magical device slowly opened, and a cylinder rose from within. Above the cylinder, a small piece of silver-white metal emitting a strange energy field appeared in front of his eyes. "This can't be the metal that the Arcanist found, right?" the 4-wheel card thought to himself. He immediately reacted to the metal in front of him. However, after seeing this piece of metal, Sulen suddenly felt that this metal seemed to be very similar to something he had learned about in his previous life. "This can't be a nuclear material, can it?" A thought suddenly appeared in Sulen's mind. He then began to compare the two in his mind. Nuclear radiation could kill creatures and also cause them to mutate, but this mutation was uncontrollable. However, the mutation in this ancient ruin was guided and interfered with by humans. Sulen had reason to believe that this piece of metal was a nuclear material. System, appraise it. Ding. Appraisal complete. The target is a high-purity metal, plutonium. This metal has a strong radiation property. Please take note. After hearing the system's prompt, Sulen's expression became very interesting. He did not expect the Arcanists to be so bold as to use this radioactive metal to induce mutations in living creatures. Judging from the monsters living in the ruins, their experiment was obviously a success. As for the Arcanist who was studying these mutated monsters everywhere, he had died long ago. It was no wonder that the elders of the 9 ring towers would oppose his continued research on this radiation mutation. It was really because the uncertainty and danger of this mutation was too high. Even if the human body in this world was good, if ordinary people were exposed to this radiation environment, the mortality rate was still very high. Of course, Sulen's current physical fitness had long been immune to this kind of radiation, and the grey dwarves and centaurs were also not affected much. This metal plutonium was discovered in the later days of the Arcane Empire, but unlike the Arcanist who used it to induce mutation in creatures, other Arcanists studied elemental fission. It was said that this technology was used to provide a stable and huge amount of energy for the floating city. During the Arcane Empire, the floating city had an obstacle that could not be bypassed, and that was the mice energy core. This was a magical energy core. Legend had it that this energy core was born during the era of the new gods. It was made by some great Arcanists with the power of the goddess of magic. It could provide a huge amount of energy continuously and stably. It was also the appearance of the mice energy core that made the appearance of the floating city a reality. As the saying went, success and failure depended on the same person. The mice energy core had many advantages, such as continuous and stable energy, safety and efficiency, simple maintenance, huge energy, and so on. So, for a long time, the floating city used the mice energy core as its energy core. However, the mice energy core had a fatal flaw, and that was, it had to be connected to the magic net. Only by connecting to the magic net, with the help of the magic net, could it have that huge and almost miraculous energy. Once the magic net was lost, the energy of the mice energy core would rapidly decline. After the arcanists at that time discovered this problem, they began to study it continuously. Their research had two directions. One was to try the artificial magic net, and the other was to completely abandon the mice energy core and then research and replace it with a new energy source. In the battle between the arcanists and the gods, the magic net had collapsed, but the floating cities of the arcanists hadn't become mere decorations. It was clear that the arcanists had succeeded, but it was unknown how far they had gone. After that great war, a lot of information about the arcanists had been erased by the gods. It was also because this world was not the main material plane that the gods were most concerned about, and the power of the gods was somewhat insufficient, so a lot of information about the arcane empire was secretly preserved by the wizards. However, the artificial magic net and elemental fission technology were still not left behind. According to the information passed down, the arcanists had entered the interstellar era. After all, they were able to colonize planes, and the wizard civilization of this world had not yet stepped out of the plane. Only some powerful wizards relied on their own power to enter the astral world and carry out some interstellar travel. Overall, the current civilization was still far from the heyday of the arcanists. After all, this was an extraordinary world. Sometimes, a person's power could be so strong that it could destroy the world. For example, if a legendary spellcaster was given time to cast a level 9 spell, Meteorite, it would not be a problem for him to destroy a city. To be able to enter the astral world, one had to be at least a legend. It was said that the danger level of the astral world was at least level 16, but few people would venture into the astral world before entering the legendary realm. It was not an adventure, it was a death wish. To explore the astral world, one had to be at least a high-level legend. Many evil gods lived in the astral world, and the vast majority of ancient dragons, archaic dragons, and so on. Once you encountered them, you would not even have a chance to escape if you were below the legendary realm. Although the legendary masters could not defeat them, escaping was not a problem. After all, they had left the material plane. Although there was no protection from the plane, the restrictions of the plane were also loosened. A teleportation spell here was much more difficult and far than in the material plane. Sulen asked the Grey Dwarf to find a heavy lead box, and then put the silver-white metal into the box. As the metal was put into the lead box, Sulen keenly found that the strange energy that had shrouded the whole ruins had completely disappeared. In other parts of the ruins, with the disappearance of the energy field, other creatures in the ruins had some sense, and all the mutant animals became restless. After putting away the metal, Sulen did not leave. He intended to dismantle the equipment and transport it back. Taking out a few magic crystals, Sulen used image photography to save the image of the equipment, and then carefully dismantled it. These Grey Dwarves were indeed good craftsmen. Although it was the first time they had come into contact with this kind of equipment, these Grey Dwarves did a very good job. In addition to using image photography to save image data, these Grey Dwarves also drew a blueprint, on which all the parts were numbered. Then these parts were also recorded in that location. After dismantling all these parts, all the parts were carefully preserved, and then put into Sullen's storage space. However, there were still too many parts, and the storage space could not fit them all. In the end, he could only let the Grey Dwarves carry them. Chapter 291. It took some time to dismantle all the parts of the equipment and transport them away. Sulen also left the basement. Back on the surface of the ruins, Hathaway was still studying the monsters. The ruins were almost completely searched by the Grey Dwarfs, but there was nothing valuable except for the equipment. Are you done with your research? We're ready to go. Sulan looked at Hathaway, who was still studying, and said, The results will be out soon. Wait for me. Hathaway said impatiently. Then she left Sulan there and continued her research. Not finished yet. See it in 10 minutes. 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 I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. Not finished yet. See it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. Not yet finished yet. Not yet yet. I'm not done yet. I'll look at it in 10 minutes. Not yet. See 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 it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. Not yet, not yet. See it in 10 minutes. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.